background. Don't mind me, I'm like running back and forth.
Oh, yeah. 178. That is what's displaying to the people that are on.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 8th, 2020 regular meeting of the Concord School Board. Tonight's meeting is in person and consists of a quorum of members present in the Krista McAuliffe Auditorium of the Concord High School and is open to the public. Although this is not an emergency meeting under the governor's guidelines, since we are all in person, the board does have members participating remotely via telephone or by electronic means, specifically Microsoft Teams. Therefore, all of our votes will be roll call votes. In addition, for this meeting, we are also providing public access by telephone and by other electronic. We're utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting, and all members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform or here in person, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: area code 925-391-1169, and utilizing conference ID 178-981-124 number sign or hashtag, by clicking on the link providing on the SAU8.org website, or by watching the meeting on CCTV's YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/ConcordNHTV. A recording of this meeting will also be posted on the CCTV's website. If you have any questions, please go to the Concord School District website. The board will provide 2 opportunities for comment during this meeting. There will be a period for public comment on agenda items, and at the end of the meeting for any comments on any topic. We do encourage the submission of citizen comments via email at concordinfo@sau8.org. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting using Microsoft Teams or telephonically. The meeting and pertinent instructions were posted on the website of the board at sau8.org more than 24 hours prior to the meeting and are highlighted at the top of the website. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-513-9008. Okay, let's start this meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. Please note that since some members will be participating remotely and any votes that are taken this will be done by roll call vote, we need to be able to be sure that you can be heard, and you need to also, for those people who are remote, let us know if there is anyone in the room with you. So, as is required by the Right to Know law, and for everyone, please mute your microphone when not speaking and waiting to be recognized. Secretary Higgins, would you call the roll?
I'd be happy to. Ms. Cannon, are you present?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I'm here. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And our student rep?
And our student rep, Alice Richards?
Okay. Ms. Poinier and Mr. Crush, are you alone in your room? Or is there someone with you?
I'm here and alone, thanks.
Yeah, I'm here and alone.
Thank you. Okay. Before I move on to the agenda, as a board, I'd like us to just take a moment of silence. Our Concord School District mourns the recent death of 2 very beloved middle school teachers. So if we could just have a moment of silence. Jennifer O'Sullivan was a 7th and 8th grade science teacher for 25 years at Runlet Middle School. A Concord High graduate, she moved to Texas for her undergraduate work, later earning a master's degree from Antioch. She joined us the year after she completed her student teaching in 6th grade at the Conant School in Concord. She was a longtime leader in the science department at Runlet, working on our district science committee, organizing strand study groups with colleagues, and becoming part of the PACE assessment work when it first began in the district. She was instrumental in developing a white farm field study project for her students, giving them a real-life, hands-on science experiences. She prided herself on fostering a classroom climate of mutual respect between students and teacher, using humor to engage her students and helping them see different perspectives. She was a devoted teacher and a cherished colleague, and we will miss her. And in over her 29 years of teaching at Runlet, Michelle Bartlett taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science, as well as 6th grade math. Within a year of starting in Concord, Michelle was the co-chair of the District Science Committee, continuing in that role for 10 years. She was also a longtime member of the District Technology Committee and a technology rep in her building for many years. For most of the years she taught in Concord, she also ran a Lego robotics camp at Runlet in the summer. An athlete herself, she coached track and field, cross country, and Nordic skiing, most recently taking on the assistant track coach position for the boys track team at Runlet. Her list of awards is long and includes the Presidential Award for Excellence in Secondary Science, an Eddie, New Hampshire's Excellence in Education Award. Above all, Michelle was a passionate scientist, an exceptionally skilled teacher, who would do whatever it took to make and maintain strong and nurturing connections with her students. We will greatly miss these two Runlet teachers, and anyone who knows them or knew them knows the contribution that they made. Thank you for letting me have this moment to talk about them.
Thank you. Let's send our love to Runlet Middle School science community as well. It's going to be difficult for them.
Thank you. Yes. At this time, we go to the approval of the agenda, and I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda on 2 items. My first motion would be to amend the agenda to include the recognition of Jennifer Patterson at point, let's call it 3A. Then we'll have in B policy, or 3B, which will be the board member or district officer resignation. And then I would like to amend the agenda to include 3C, which is policy 121, election of board officers when there's a vacancy. So I'd like to make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved by Jim Richards, seconded by Barbara Higgins.
I'll do a roll call vote, yes?
Yes, but first, is there any discussion?
Yeah, Jim, it's Chuck. I'd like to make a motion to talk about future meetings and how we're going to do them remotely as well as in person going forward for future school board members as well as the general public.
Okay, Mr. Crush has made the motion that we would include in the agenda a discussion of future meetings and how will we conduct them with regards to both in-person and remotely. Mr. Crush, would you put that somewhere around 12, with item number 12, which is proposed calendar of meetings?
That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
So Mr. Crush has made a motion to add, and actually we probably should vote on the first motion before we get to this motion, because we're 2 separate motions. So if you could hold your motion until we have resolved or voted on the first motion, Chuck, I would appreciate it. Is there any
No
other
problem.
discussion on the inclusion of 3A and 3C to the agenda involving Jennifer Patterson's recognition and policy 121? Okay, so Ms. Higgins, would you call the vote?
I
on
will.
that?
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
The motion passes 9-0. Okay, Mr. Crush, would you please
Yeah.
propose your agenda item?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that, I believe it's item 12, that we consider future school board meetings, both for school board members as well as the general public, both in person and virtual.
Mr. Crush has made the motion that we include as part of item 12 the discussion of future school board meetings with regards to in-person as well as remote participation by the members and public. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Crush, seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion?
I do have a little bit. Mr. Crush, I think this is a great motion. I need to know just a little bit more about it. Unless I'm missing something, and I may be, can we talk a little more of the specifics of what you're looking for?
Sure, is Mr. Richards okay for me to address that?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Crush, go right ahead. Thank you very much.
I'm trying to follow the protocol here. You know, it's your first time leading the meeting, so, you know, I don't...
Thank you, Mr.
Start
Crush. Appreciate it. So recognized.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to go through and talk about our procedures and processes for having meetings with the public, as far as screening and things of that nature. But as equal as important, I want to talk about, are we going to allow the public to continue to have access through Teams? Are we going to continue to allow school board members to continue to have access through Teams or some other medium?
Why didn't he go? Who is kids? His kids, maybe. Stepkids.
I hear some nursing home too, too.
Okay, Mr. Croto.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
It does. I wonder if we're going to be able to, well, I think a discussion makes great sense, because we may not come to some answers tonight, other than we need further study, or we have some good ideas sitting here, and I don't know them yet. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? On that case, Mrs. Higgins, would you call the roll?
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
So the motion passes,
Yep, 8 to
passes 9-0.
Mr. Richards?
8-0.
It's 8-0.
8-0.
There's not 9 of us yet.
I'm
Soon.
with it. 8-0. Thank you for that correction. Clearly, I need to go to my math skills class this time, so thank you. Are there any other motions with regards to changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved by Ms. Higgins, I believe,
Yep.
and seconded by Mr. Croto.
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Should we have any
Is there any
discussion?
discussion?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is there any discussion, further discussion? Seeing no one's hands even above me there. Ms. Higgins, would you please call a roll call
Okay.
vote?
Ms. Cannon?
Still aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. And the agenda is approved, 8-0. Okay, at this point, I would like to ask Ms. Higgins to read a resolution that I would like to make a motion that this board adopt with regards to recognition of Jennifer Patterson, most recently resigned from the presidency of the board. Ms. Higgins.
I miss her already. Okay, Board of Education resolution on the completion of extraordinary service of Jennifer Patterson. Whereas Jennifer Patterson has served with honor and distinction as a member of the Concord Board of Education for a total of 12 years, from 2008 to 2020, as Vice President in 2010, and from 2014 to 2017 as President, beginning in 2018 until September 2020. So she was Vice President and then President, and as Secretary in 2009. Whereas Jennifer Patterson, as Chairperson and a member of the Communications and Policy Committee, represented and served Concord School District, its students, and the community in strengthening our communication processes and introducing and updating important policies. Whereas Jennifer Patterson, as Chairperson and a member of the Instructional Committee, represented and served Concord School District, its students, and the community in developing, reviewing, and revising curriculum, instruction, and assessment, ensuring all students have access to rigorous programs and high academic standards. Whereas Jennifer Patterson, as a member of the Joint City Council School Board Committee, represented and served Concord School District, its students, and the community in continuing cooperation and coordination with city government and services. Whereas Jennifer Patterson, as chairperson and a member of the Negotiations Committee, represented and served Concord School District, its students, and the community in labor negotiations, ensuring that the district focused on providing an excellent education to Concord children, balancing student needs with the ability of the community to provide the resources. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education, Concord School District, gives Jennifer Patterson the highest commendation and a vote of sincere appreciation for her devoted service and the many, many contributions she has made to the public education in Concord.
Thank you. Would someone like to make that motion that we adopt that?
I'd be happy to make the motion that we adopt that resolution as read.
I'll second it.
And a second is moved by Mr. Croto and seconded by Ms. Higgins. Discussion. And I would like to start off by just saying that I had the pleasure of working with Ms. Patterson as both a fellow committee member and as a fellow officer over 6 years. She brought a wisdom, a thoughtfulness to the position, but more than anything, she had an overriding concern with everyone in the Concord school community, students, teachers, parents, and the administration and all the board members as well. We will miss her experience, her knowledge, and her thoughtful counsel. Does anyone else have anything? Mr. Croto.
I too had the pleasure of working with Jen for some time as her vice president and also as a colleague. And I got to tell you that we didn't always agree. There were times that we did not agree at all. I wanted to arm wrestle her and she wouldn't do it. But she always had dignity. She always had thoughtfulness in everything she did, and she taught me. She actually taught me how to quit being the bad cop and sometimes be the good cop, and that you could get, things accomplished that way. And I really liked her. I liked what she did for this community and what she did for this board, and her leadership style. And she'll be missed. And I wish her well.
I think what stands out for me with Jenny, is Jenny had every rule and regulation and law and statute memorized in her head. And as someone that has bent every rule ever put in front of me, there's sometimes safety in the procedure. I remember an athletic director here, Bill Whitmore, lecturing me time and again on follow the rules and they'll protect you. And in the last couple of years, with the terrible stuff we've gone through as a district, Jenny took hits a lot, lots of public criticism, a really rough time, and she was just able to put that aside and rely on the process sometimes to lead us to the right decisions. And she was just very graceful in doing that. I'll miss that a lot. As a board member, that's a unbelievably good skill to have, and she really did keep us on the right path more than once.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or discussion items? In that case, for the resolution, Ms. Higgins, would you call the roll call vote?
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Thank you, Jenny.
Very good, and we will send that off, a copy of that to Ms. Patterson. Next item, 3A, or 3B rather, is per board policy number 115, a board member or district officer resignation. The policy states that the board shall fill a vacancy occurring in the board, the president nominating, and the school board shall elect by majority vote an individual from the district or replacing a board member who was elected at large from the city at large. Tonight I would like to make a recommendation to fill out the remaining months before the election of a replacement for the at-large position. Tonight I am recommending, I want to just talk about, I looked through this. We only have a very short time before the election, and I'm happy to say we have a number of people that will be running. And it's always exciting to see new people running for the board. During this time, I wanted to look for someone who had experience with the board, who knew the policies, and would not have a huge learning curve to be able to make a contribution right off. Ms. Patterson was on the Communications and Policy Committee, which is one of the most difficult committees or challenging committees there are, requiring a tremendous amount of knowledge. As we go forward, I have asked Ms. Cannon to chair that committee, and she has graciously agreed. I would see that this person that I'm nominating would be on that committee. For those reasons, I am putting forth the name of Maureen Redmond-Skura to fill the position. Ms. Redmond-Skura has served on the board before. She has served on the Communications and Policy Committee. She is served as a secretary for this board. She is a published columnist and children's author. She has participated in the original Charter Commission created by Governor Lynch and served as its chair. She has dedicated herself on numerous nonprofits that have helped family and children. And for that reason, I wholeheartedly put her name before you as my nominee. Before we go to a vote, is there any discussion?
We need a second. Do we or no? Or do you present and we vote?
I am putting forth her as a nominee.
Got
I
it.
believe
Never
I
mind.
need someone to make the motion and second it and vote for that of approval.
I move that we accept Jim's recommendation of Maureen Redmond-Skura to replace Jenny's seat for the next 4 months.
I'll second.
The motion has been, for the approval of Ms. Redmond-Skura, has been made by Ms. Higgins and approved by, or seconded by Mr. Croto.
Excuse me, Mr. Richards, I'm sorry, can I ask a question? This is Lyndon. It's my understanding that this seat is filled as of the approval of the election, the canvass of the vote, not January, but November 4th.
No.
Thank you, Lyndon. We will consult with counsel, I believe, on that and follow whatever legal counsel says. But that, I don't, and thank you for pointing that out, and we will look into that as far as to when this position, the duration of this position, when this position ends. But until that time, I don't think that has an impact on our approval, unless anybody on the board thinks otherwise. No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Yes, I think it's important to have her in place.
And I would direct the superintendent to please consult with counsel in conjunction with me regarding the interpretation of that policy.
Because we've done this before. We've done this a couple times before.
We've done this a few times before. I would have to go back and look at the actual minutes to find out the date of resignations and whether or not they were resignation dates that took effect on the 31st of December or if they did it prior to that.
Right.
However, one way or another, we will be
Perfect.
electing someone. I would also like to say that for this nomination, I wanted to not nominate someone who is currently running. Ms. Redmond-Skura will not be running for a position on the school board in November, and therefore we are not creating any sort of impropriety or undue endorsement of anyone. We look forward to whoever wins the election as joining us on the board. So with that said, is there further discussion?
Just a comment, Mr. Richards. I too had the pleasure of working with Maureen Redmond-Skura, and a couple of things that jump out. One is that she never shied away from giving a popular or an unpopular vote, and for that I always appreciated her. She always spoke her mind and did it with dignity. She was a fellow board member who was a pleasure to be with, so I welcome her.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments? Jack, tell me if they have a hand up there so as I can't see behind me. All right, not seeing any. Ms. Higgins, would you call the vote?
I will. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Ms. Higgins? Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
All right, I have to look funny. I know that Ms. Redmond-Skura was in on this meeting. Is she a part of, is she behind me?
She is. She's right there.
Thank you.
I'm looking at her.
So, Maureen, we welcome you to the board and thank you for your service. We look forward to your counsel and your participation. So, thank you, and welcome, in this case, to our partially remote board.
Welcome back, Maureen.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. I know you will. All right, the next item, 3C, is per policy 121, which calls for the replacement of any officers from whose position becomes open. As I am automatically moved into the presidency, that creates an opening in the vice presidency, which we are directed to fill, and I think is very important that we do fill. So at this point, the policy directs us to hold the election similar to what we would do in January when we elect board members. So I will open up the floor for nominations, and then when we have, with our candidates, we will have a discussion and then a vote. So
I would like to, Jim, this is Chuck. I'd like to nominate Tom Proto, please.
You took it right out of my mouth, Mr. Crush.
Mr. Crush, behind me, thank you.
I'll second
has
that.
nominated
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry. We're just
Croto.
nominating.
Sure, do we have a second?
Well, yeah, I'm going to, yeah.
Ms. Higgins, second that. Okay. Do we have any further nominations for vice president? Well, I personally, I will say here that we have several very qualified people on the board, and I look forward to everyone's service in the coming years, but I will certainly support Mr. Croto within his experience and be very appreciative if he chooses to join our executive committee. So with that being said, if there isn't any more discussion, I will entertain a motion for Mr. Croto to be the vice president for the remainder of this term.
So
I'll make the
moved.
motion.
Oh,
And I'll second.
Okay? And thank you, Gina, anyway. So, Ms. Higgins, would you call the vote?
I will. Ms. Cannon?
aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye, resolutely. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
This will give our board some good stability over the next 4 months. Tom's very experienced in this role on the board.
We look forward very much to Mr. Croto's experience and contribution as the vice president. Thank you.
And I look forward to being helpful and handing that torch
Just someone else.
in December. But thank you all for your vote of
Thanks.
confidence, and I'll do my very best.
Thank you.
Mr. Richards?
Let's see, on to the next order of business will be approval of the board minutes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes, who's?
Sorry.
on?
Nope, it's me.
Ah, yes, I
So-
recognize Ms. Cannon.
I am having some difficulty with my hearing aids, and everybody's wearing masks. I would like to ask if people could try to speak a little more slowly so that I can keep up with trying to figure out what it was that you said behind the mask and what I heard through my hearing aids. So I'm just asking if people could speak a little more slowly.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If anyone was not able to hear that, Ms. Cannon ask that we speak more slowly. We are all wearing masks, which muffle us, but also protect each other. So if I can ask all board members and others who will comment or call in to please speak slowly. We want everyone to be able to hear and understand. Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon, for bringing
Thank
that
you.
up. So our next order is the approval of board minutes. I'm not going to read the minutes because, as Ms. Cannon pointed out to me earlier, there are many, many, many pages. But we have read them prior. I will ask for approval of them in toto. The minutes include the special board meeting of August the 6th, the special board meeting of August the 10th, the special board meeting of August the 17th, and the special board meeting for scheduling on August the 24th. Does anyone have any amendments or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no one's hand, can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll move to approve make the motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made by Ms. Cannon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any further discussion?
Can I just say that, once again, Lyndon, and if she has help, these minutes are just voluminous, and she's done a great, incredible job getting them all out here. All of the comments from all of our folks, just amazing work. Thank you, Lyndon.
Thank you, Mr. Croto. I hardly agreed. I read through those minutes all the way through, looking for any errors or anything that was unclear, and I found nothing, so they did an outstanding job. So with that said, can we have a vote to approve the minutes? Ms. Higgins?
Yep. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I'd say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Ponier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. We'll now move on to recognitions and reports. And I would like to recognize Superintendent Murphy.
Should.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. That's nice.
Yep.
Are you good? Okay. Well, thanks. Thank you for the chance to talk a little bit about what a wonderful day I had. So I'd like to start with that if I could. I want to talk a little bit about our opening day today and our return to school. From a personal point of view, it was just an awesome feeling to walk into your school board, to your school buildings, and see students and teachers actively in teaching and learning. It was fabulous. We took a very slow approach, as you know, with youngsters that were vulnerable, those youngsters that perhaps are at risk by remaining outside of our school or remaining on a remote learning model. We brought them in. We brought youngsters in that had learning challenges, as well as our English language learners, youngsters with 504s, and those youngsters that perhaps internet access is not available because of their where they are living at the time. So it was fabulous. We had well over 300 students that we were serving in that regard. The other piece of this is that many of our teachers were in their classrooms teaching remotely. They didn't have any students, but they used their classroom and all the resources that are available to them to teach from their classroom. So it was really neat to watch them and all of their animation and as they presented lessons to the youngsters. I also had a chance today to visit 3 of the schools. I have 4 more on my agenda for Thursday. And I spent some time at the high school with the high school kids in CRTC, and they were unbelievable. You know, I told them that the district has done everything. We have set the stage for them to return to school. We have put in all the protocols that are required to ensure that they're safe, including wearing masks, including social distancing, including hand sanitizers, as well as washing their hands. And I said it was up to them. It's up to our students now to prove to everyone that they can do this, that they can remain safe, and that we don't have any outbreaks of the virus. And let me tell you, they were all in support of that because they know how important it is. They want to be with their peers. They want to be with their buds, as they told me today. And they miss that socialization that is such a critical piece of what we do every day in school. I had great talk with them and asked them if they were glad to be back in school, and unanimously they all spoke the same way, absolutely yes. As I visited the elementary schools, they were much more active outside. I have to tell you, they were using the tents that we put up on the school grounds. Kids were out there either having lunch, some of them were doing their lessons with teachers in small groups, and there were some art lessons also. They were using the outside tents to be able to provide that for the youngsters. So I think that was very well received, and of course they love being outside, but more importantly they love being with their teachers and their peers. So all in all, I would say that we had a great start. Now, you know as well as anybody that we had a whole nother component to today, and that was our remote learning model. Most of our youngsters were in a remote learning model, much more synchronous learning, much more face-to-face with live teaching with their teacher, and their lessons throughout the day. Schedules were provided by our principals. Again, our principals worked so hard this summer. They were unbelievable. I can tell you that I didn't see even very many vacation day requests this summer because they were at work making sure that things went well with remote learning, and I think they had a great start today. We got some happy grams from some parents, which I was very appreciative of, and that they indicated that things went very well. Now, you know, we still had some glitches, first time on Zoom for a lot of people. I said to Pam McLeod, our tech director, you know, there were people all over the country starting school today, so I think Zoom was on everybody's lips today. And so we had some technical difficulties, but they worked their way through them. And we will continue to focus on making sure that all of our kids have reliable service. For those youngsters that internet was weak, we've provided them extra hotspots and devices so that they can have stronger internet service. So all in all, again, I think it was a pretty good first day. And as your interim superintendent, I'm pleased to report that I think it was a good start. I think it was wise also to take a slow start, to take step by step, small groups, bringing our teachers in to actually do their teaching in the classroom. So I think that was a good move, and it was well attended to throughout the day. So kudos to everybody. We continue with our athletics and our extracurricular activities, both at the high school and the middle school. That's going well. We've had no problems with that. I know that the athletic director has scheduled youngsters in a regional approach to their games. I see on the schedule Bedford, Goffstown, the schools in Manchester. And I think we'll have one that will come from Rochester over to play in Concord. So they'll have a 5th game this season. So I think those were, everything so far in that respect is working very well. I think I told you that at CRTC we had well over 200 students there today, and it went very well. Buses, that's probably the big piece of our day. Those bus runs, Terry has been fabulous about meeting the needs of kids. This isn't the traditional bus route. He gets lists of kids, students, and their names, addresses, and he's making sure that the route is designed so that we can pick those youngsters up and get into school. We did notice today that there were a lot of parents driving youngsters to school also, which we really appreciate. I mean, that's a big help to Terry and his crew, and especially when you think about social distancing on the buses. So that was a big help, but that went well. He's also doing, supporting CTRC so that youngsters are getting into their classes up there as well. He's also helping out with some of the youngsters who are unable to get to the school for student practices, for their soccer practice or volleyball or whatever. So we actually have some runs that will allow us to get those youngsters to their practices after school. And that seems to be working out very well. Last week, Terry and his crew delivered Chromebooks, delivered materials that the students needed for their remote learning. They were all over the city throughout the day on Thursday and Friday, and again, for those families that weren't home over those 2 days, he delivered Chromebooks as well as materials to those homes today. So we think everybody is in pretty good shape with that. As you know, and as you have done in the past, we will be delivering food for those youngsters whose families require it. We're pleased to report tonight that the federal government has given us a waiver and that we will be providing food for our youngsters, for all youngsters, not just youngsters that are on free and reduced. And they did that for a lot of reasons, because the economy is, there are a lot of families that were never on free or reduced, but right now with the economy, maybe loss of job or whatever, it puts them in a difficult situation. So that food is available, and if they can't pick it up at the schools, then it will be delivered via our school buses. We're happy to be able to do that, and we're also utilizing our drivers and keeping them very busy with these tasks throughout the day, and that's been a big help, and they're very appreciative of it. I just wanted to kind of update you on what the staff did last week. It's so impressive. Our English language learning staff, all of our teachers, our educational associates, all the tutors, the folks that work with our English language learners, for the second time on last Thursday night, met with families, exceeded 100 plus families, moms, dads, grandmas, aunts, the little kids, to hear more about the kinds of services that are available, having their materials, Chromebooks, and filling out any kinds of forms and information they need. All those teachers were out there with the families last Thursday night again, and you can see the results of that work with so many of our youngsters in school today receiving their services. So again, I would say kudos to our English language learning department. They've done a fabulous job. We talked a little bit about remote learning. I think one of the things that we're really going to target is attendance. I know that you had expressed concerns about student attendance in the spring. Our teachers will be taking attendance in their classes in the high school every period. In the elementary school, they'll be doing it once in the morning, once around noontime, and in the afternoon, so that we can get a better handle. And at our next board meeting, I will report out to you what the attendance was. I know that there's going to be some discussion around next steps, and I don't want to get into that because I think the instructional committee will do that. They've spent some time deliberating, and I think that they will report out to you in terms of what the next steps are. So I'll hold off on that. But are there I guess the best thing to do is I'll stop there. I have a couple of other things that are on the agenda for me to report out on, but I'd like to stop there and see if there's any questions.
Kathleen, it's Chuck. I will chime in and add one thing. So my daughter is, as you know, special needs and 100% remote right now. Her teachers were phenomenal today. I was not here, but Amy, my wife, told me the effort to create connection, the effort to reach out to the teacher to connect to the student, for their comfort level, their preparation. It was kudos to all of her teachers from Runlet Middle School. So I did want to share that. It was very positive.
Thank you. I think just a comment, I think we've been very attentive to the social emotional learning piece. You have to remember the students haven't been in school since March, and so that's been on, that's a priority for our teachers. So those things that, the connections and relationships that Mr. Crush just spoke about were a priority for our teachers. Thanks for bringing that up, Chuck. I think that's a great point.
Thank you.
I have a neighbor who has a first grader, so she was in kindergarten all spring and had a really sort of traumatic go of it. So I came out on my way here, and she was coming out the door, and she was on her way to a celebration dinner at McDonald's because she had such a great first day. So, you know, Happy Meals, yay. So that made me feel good because she really struggled in the spring, and that's one of our teeny tinies, so it was a relief.
Mr. Crush, or Mr. Croto, rather?
Kathleen, we had all gotten memos or notes that Jack was working with some folks, I think through the Boys and Girls Club, to work a little closer with folks about getting daycare. Can you give us an update on that, or can Jack?
I'm going to let Jack. He's been working with the Boys and Girls Club as well as the Y. So I'm going to, if he doesn't mind, I'd like to turn it over to Jack.
When
on
I
that.
hear parents who are really concerned, that's one of them.
Sure.
Thank
So,
you, Jack.
as you know, this wasn't a program we're sponsoring. You know, if we were opened in a regular year, the Boys and Girls Club would be the after-school program at Christa McAuliffe, Millbrook, and Broken Ground. The Y would have been at Abbott Downing and Beaver Meadow. We went back and forth with them on how to best offer the needs that we had heard from city manager and the mayor. There was that need from when Superintendent Murphy and I met with them, and a number of parents worried about it. So they came up with those flyers, and we sent them out to the community on their behalf, no different than we do with any other community organization. So they are in the process of parents enrolling with them directly. They have multiple sites available. So that is where that is, and that is all driven by them, money collected by them, rates set by them. That has nothing to do with us. We're just a conduit to try to help push that along. And we have been talking to them with Steeplegate Mall. I did go up and tour that with Chris Emmon, and we're going to see if there needs to be that piece to happen. I know part of the struggle with them, too, is also employees. They're seeing what that is, but they have grants and some other things that are going on. So they're starting to build out that program. Does that help?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Superintendent, thank you for just bringing that out. It's a long time since teachers have only taught math, English, science. Our teachers do so much more. And in fact, to be quite honest, our assistants, our bus drivers, the entire staff are called on to do so much more in service for our students and for our community. And thank you for recognizing that very much. Yes, wait a second.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to say I am obviously a student at Concord High. I had a really great first experience with my first day. I think the teachers did a really great job, especially I've used Zoom before, but I know a lot of students haven't. I think they did a really great way at doing that switch for us. Each teacher explained all the good functions. One of my teachers used breakout rooms, which is really effective for student conversation. And I think they understand that it's weird for us, it's weird for them, it's a different dynamic, but I think they did a really great job at introducing it to all of us and getting us back into the school format, and also having a more structured learning. But my teachers gave us time to go do work and go off the Zoom call and come back when we had questions. And obviously it's different for every grade, every age, every school, but my experience was positive. So I just wanted to say that.
Awesome, thank you. I'll share that with them, with the staff.
Any other comments?
Would you like me to just go forward with some of the other things that I have to report
Certainly,
out
please
on?
do.
Is that okay to do?
Yes, please continue.
Okay. So I put, just in your packet tonight, I put 2 documents. One of the questions that we get asked quite a bit is, what would cause you to pivot from one model to another? What would the criteria be for you to move from remote learning to hybrid to in-person, full in-person, or vice versa? I'd like to stay on the positive side if I could. So we're talking about going from remote to hybrid to full in-person. And I put in there 2 documents that we're using as call it a decision matrix, okay? Those are tools that we will use in the district to help us make decisions about what our response should be in any given case. The sheet that talks about the school is, if we had cases in the school, what would our response be in terms of ensuring the safety of our students, and what kinds of responses would we have? Now, you all know that we work very closely with Health and Human Services, so they would be very much involved, along with our consultant, Dr. Noble. So we would use that. But what has just been brought to our attention is a new dashboard that was created by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, Public Health. And so their tool, it's incredible. It's on their website, newhampshire.gov. If you click on that, you'll find quite a bit of information on COVID-19, as well as the matrix that they've created, the dashboard, if you will. So we're using that to determine what our steps would be, so that we know if the youngsters are, what level we're at. And it does change every day. Yesterday in New Hampshire, in Merrimack County, it was 1.3 per 100,000. And Gina, you told me tonight it was what?
1.5.
Yeah, so you can see it changes. Last week we were in the green for a little bit, and then we flipped back to the yellow. The state determines the numbers that we have in Concord right now as being minimal and very low. So we're using that data to help us make decisions. I just wanted to let you know, and I put those tools in your packet. Gina has...
Oh, I'm sorry, Gina.
Yeah, I just wanted, for people who are watching or listening, the dashboard is available at www.nh.gov/COVID-19/dashboard/overview.htm. So for people who are, the public who's listening, and they wonder where is this dashboard, that's where it is.
Thank you. Excellent information.
There's questions behind you, Jim.
Let me turn around here. Chuck, you've moved to the other side of the screen, so I'll recognize Chuck and Gina.
I'm on Hollywood Square.
Paul Lynch.
Yeah. So I guess a couple questions related to the matrix, and thank you for doing that, and as far as pivoting and things of that nature. As far as the matrix goes, what tools or what did you use to develop the matrix as far as the composition of the decision tree? And then, and maybe this is a question for later when I hear the recommendations of the instructional committee, but as far as pivoting, I guess my question is that the decision of the administration, or does the administration make a recommendation to the school board?
Well, I used, there's a number of school districts got together and worked on the matrix. In addition, we used data from the Harvard Global Institute, where they post information every day in terms of helping us to develop the matrix. So it was a combination of information that we had received and what would cause us to make that decision. Certainly, the school board is directly involved in the decision. However, I may not have 24 hours to post a meeting and have a decision, but I certainly would involve the school board in terms of what my steps would be. When I make a decision about whether there's a snow day or not, I don't consult with you, given the fact that I need to make a decision about the safety of our kids. I see it in some of the same way, Chuck, about this, but this is a little bit more community-based. So, you know, I have a responsibility to you first as a board to inform you, and certainly to inform our public. Parents have asked that question a lot. What happens if you have a case, a diagnosed case, not somebody who went home with a sore throat, but a diagnosed case? How would you respond? And I've been very clear about it. Our first obligation is to Health and Human Services. We have to go to them first. We have to report it. We have to get involved with contact tracing. But also we have a responsibility to make sure that our families understand what's going on and what happened, and to what degree the response will be. You saw in Bedford. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So is there like a communication plan of who would do the communication, who would be called as far as, say there is a case in a school, God forbid, a confirmed case. Is there a plan of how that would be communicated, to what teacher, to what faculty, to what students, to what parents? Is it embedded in that plan? And I don't recall.
Again, the plan had indicated that we would use the tools to communicate with our families and our teachers. There's no question about it. If we have a diagnosed case, that we would communicate with our families after our consultation with the Department of Public Health, and obviously in consultation with the board. But we have an obligation to keep people informed on this. That's clearly number one, and that would be a communication via my office out to the public and to the community, to the town, to the city government. They need to know. So it's the communication spreads wide and far to ensure that everyone is aware of what's happening.
As far as the city government communicating to them, and I promise I'll be done. So as far as communication to the city and the community at large, not specifically about individual students or families or faculty, would we utilize our communication firm in that avenue?
Well, right. As you know, that I have a consultant, and I was going to talk about that in a little bit, but that is one of the reasons I had that person, so that we made sure that the communication was very exact and succinct and clear, so that there wasn't any confusion. So they become a great tool for me in terms of the communication that I put out to the public.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Crush. Ms. Poinier.
Thank you. And thank you, Superintendent, for that clarification. I'm hoping that we can add that New Hampshire decision-making information to the guidance document that's on our website that was dated, I believe, August 26th. That document needs a little bit of updating. And I also, along with that, I feel like the district's decision-making matrix, if it doesn't apply anymore, we should probably remove it and make it really clear that we're counting on the New Hampshire guidelines instead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
This is certainly a fluid process.
Thank you. Please continue, Superintendent.
Thank you. We've had a couple other questions about how do we internally communicate? How do we have our COVID huddles? I think you've heard that word, right? So on a weekly basis, we meet in the office with our team in the office. So that's always on the agenda. We get updates from each one of the departments, providing updates to all of us so that we're aware of what's happening. We also meet with our principals once, sometimes twice a week right now. That has been critical, to have really effective communication with them, talking about things like the matrix, things like the dashboard, and how decisions will be made and how that information will be communicated. So Donna and I do that together with our building principals, and like I said, that happens at least once a week, if not twice a week. We also meet with Dr. Noble. As you know, we've brought Dr. Noble on as our consultant. Given his background in infectious disease, he's been a great resource. I know that he's open and willing to come almost any time to meet with us, and has been a great resource for us. And we'll continue to use him throughout this time. So that's how we do it every week. That's pretty much a weekly kind of thing that we're doing to get the information that we all need and get it out to the folks that have to make those decisions. Are you good with that? I'm going to keep going.
Superintendent,
Okay.
The only question I have is, are we partnering, or is there something where we would partner with the Concord Hospital with regard to testing, or within the state? with regard to any testing we may
Right,
need?
well, we're kind of waiting to hear. We know that the state of New Hampshire has bought some of the machines that do really fast result testing, so we're kind of waiting to see, because I think that's going to be a really useful tool for everyone. As you know, many of the private schools and colleges have bought their own machines so that they can constantly test their students, and I know over at the university they're doing that. I mean, they've done thousands and thousands of tests to make sure that they have a good idea where it's happening. So yes, we haven't actually had that conversation with the hospital, but with Dr. Noble, that's a place where we can have that communication.
Thank you. I'd encourage that to partner with Dr. Noble. Any other questions?
I just want to make a note
Okay.
so I don't forget. Okay. So I was asked again, I know there's a lot on my plate here, but if you bear with me, I was asked to give an update on our anti-racism work and as a follow-up. And in your board packet this month, I put in the notes from our last meeting, our August 13th meeting. We met with about 20 folks across the community, students, teachers, administrators, community folks, and agency representation. So we had another great meeting, and we really began to kind of put together an action plan based on all the recommendations that we received. And that action plan is in your folder, and I think that if you take a look at it, it's on page 53, you'll see that what the advisory committee did was put together a list of things that they would like to see us address over the next year. Now, it may even take a little bit longer than that, but optimistically, we're going to start in and addressing it. And then, for instance, I'll just read the first one. Administrators will be trained to support inclusive, equitable, and diversity in schools and throughout the district. And we've already started working on that by providing training to our staff. So what I did was I put in the goals that we would address each throughout the year, and then how we would measure that goal and how we would measure success, who was responsible for it, and what the timeline would be. There were mandatory training with all staff. We would work on hiring. As you know, that we are very limited in the diversity of our staff. And so that was a goal that people wanted us to explore. We've already begun to have conversation with our HR director, and Larry's working on that because that was part of their recommendation. Curriculum was huge. That was a major recommendation that we take a look at our curriculum and that it reflect what actually is. And the focus they wanted to start was within social studies, which they started this summer. They did curriculum work this summer in social studies, and English language arts. Those were the two areas that the committee recommended that we take a look at. Another area that we've already begun working with one of our assistant principals, well trained in this area, and it was under restorative practices related to discipline. So that the assistant principal Hebert is looking at that with staff members to what does restorative justice look like around discipline. I expect that they'll be working on that throughout the school year in coming up with recommendations to address that. So again, that's I see that as a year long. And you know, some of these goals will involve more than just the committee. It will involve our students. It will involve our safety compliance officer. It will touch upon your school board policy, so you'll hear some things around discipline. It might be looking at the bully policy again and trying to evaluate the effectiveness of that. So you'll see more of that. One of the suggestions and recommendations was to evaluate the use of school resource officers in the buildings. I know that one is controversial, but it's something that the group wanted to look at, and controversial or not, we owe that time to look at it and evaluate it and determine the effectiveness of the school resource officer in our schools. One of the other things that was really important, it was important to the students. I met with some students. I think I told you that at the last meeting. I met with students, about 20 students. We had a great conversation. Alice was a big help in helping me put that together, and she got the students to come in the evening, and the principal, Michael Reardon, sat with us, and we talked. And one of the things that they wanted was a safe place. They wanted to be able to share their stories or share their concerns, and they wanted to make sure that they had a place that was safe, and that they could talk about that without any, negative feedback. And so we're looking at that. That's another place where our safety compliance officer will help us to ensure, and our guidance counselors will ensure that kids have a safe place to be. I'm just trying to see some other areas that we talked about, was to take a look at the educational needs of our students who face economic barriers, and that prevents them from having the opportunities to learn effectively like some other groups. So we want to take a look at that, and that will, again, that will be over time that we will need to do that. We want to do work with our community. That was another big one, that we work with the police and the fire and our local government agencies to share this work. I'm hoping that we will have a chance when we meet with the city council at the end of the month, that we will have a chance to share some of that, some of these recommendations with them also. The last piece that was really important, and this was across the board with the students as well as the committee, and that was around gathering data. What's the data say? What's the discipline rates? Are there some groups that are disciplined at a different level than other groups? Do all students have access to AP classes? Lots of data like that. And so we are actually in the process right now of doing that, looking at all of that information. There's already a lot of it done at the high school, and we have a data person in the office that's been gathering data. So we'll have that information available. I think that's very telling. So that just highlights some of the things that we did and where we are. We have an action plan. It's not quite finished yet. You can see we still have some areas that we want to explore. We'll be bringing it back. We'll be meeting as an advisory once a month. So,
I have a question, Mr. Richards.
Go for it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Kathleen, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of things. One is, I'm glad to hear you mention that you're going to be looking at the discipline rates and just to determine if there are different types of discipline being attached based on race. Does that include restraint and seclusion?
Yes, and it also includes more than just race. It will include some of our other groups.
Yes.
Okay, so I just, wanted to be clear that they were much broader.
No, and I'm glad you're being broad, and I kind of misspoke there, but absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Cannon.
I just wanted to ask, in gathering the data, I know one of the data points that's being looked at is, does everyone have access to AP classes? And I want to suggest that we drill down on that a little bit so that we look at what are kids being offered in the middle school with respect to various groups. Because if you don't have the foundation in the middle school to start taking some of the higher level classes when you get to freshman year, you don't ever get to those AP classes in junior and senior year. So, what does the data look like in middle school?
Great point. And Paulette and I have had that conversation at the middle school. So and she's very involved in this committee work. So I expect that you'll see some of that information coming out of the middle school. One of the recommendations, and I'll finish up this section on this, is that the committee recommended that we hire a facilitator to help us with this work. I mean, I just went over, 10 or 15 of these recommendations. And I think we talked about it at your last meeting. We have a meeting this week, I think this week on Thursday, with a subcommittee to look at some people who have presented some plans that we might want to look at in terms of a facilitator to help us. I think, Tom, you asked where do we get the money for that, because it's not in the budget. I get that. But there's some grant money entitlements that we can use, and I think I told you that I've used my grant monies, Title IV, Title II, for that very purpose, and do a contract with somebody to help us with this work. So I think it's going to be important.
I'm really relieved to hear all this. I have a pretty close connection with a lot of young people in the community, many young people of color in lots of different backgrounds and such. And it's such a tender issue. And if I've learned one thing from all the conversations I've had with people who have, been smacked with a racist comment or a stupid comment or whatever, if you throw a baseball through a window, whether or not you did it on purpose, it still breaks the window. And so it's hard sometimes as a white person who thinks I'm not racist to not want to apologize or make an excuse for a racist comment that I didn't intend. And it goes back to communication, and that learning to talk to one another sometimes takes away lots of perceptions of what the other person's thinking. So I'm just making the comment because it's just a relief to know that this much work is going into it because it's so utterly important on so many levels. So thank you.
I think that's exactly why the students wanted a safe place.
Right.
Because we do say things and we make mistakes and we say the wrong thing, right? We all do that. I've done that,
and then you try to justify it. Oh, I didn't mean it, but so what?
So we have to help each other with that, and I think that's one of the things that the students highlighted when we talked to them. Alice, do you want to add anything to that? Because you were right in the thick of it.
Hold it right up, Alice.
Yeah, so we had really great conversations. I think it's important to understand, it's one perspective, but I agree that people are going to make mistakes, but it's really like learning from them, and then also, right, you need to like hold yourself accountable, like, right, for all those things. It's like, we can understand and we're going to grow, we're going to do better, but making sure we understand where we've gone wrong and fixing that and doing better going forward, because you can't like take back what you've done, but you can grow and make a lot of growth from that. But yeah, we had a lot of great conversation. I think a lot of the things that you covered were all the things that we covered on. I'm not on that specific committee, but with all the conversations I've had, those are big things that we covered and are really important that we address.
And so I'm going to continue. Are you okay with that?
Yes, continue, and please remember to speak clearly and slowly.
Am I
I'm
going
just going to remind everyone as we go through our meeting.
Yeah. Sorry.
For the benefit of everyone, both here and at home, I'll just remind you. So.
Thank you.
And a close microphone helps as well.
Yeah. I'll try
You're
to
doing
be
great.
careful with that. So then the next thing I'd like to give a preliminary report out to you tonight is, as you know, when you received the Perkins report, you had a number of recommendations from that report that needed to be addressed. And, with COVID-19, so many things got thrown up in the air, right? So now that things are we're beginning to see some light at the end of the tunnel, your school compliance Title IX officer, Karen Fisher-Anderson, and myself decided that we wanted to work on those recommendations in the same kind of an action plan that we use for the anti-racism, because it's a nice tool. It's easy to read. It tells you what we're going to do, what we want to accomplish, and what the outcomes were. So in your report tonight is a preliminary action plan to address all of the recommendations from the Perkins report. And as you go through this report, and I will be happy to go through each one of them, but I think you need to read it first, and we can have a deeper discussion at another meeting. But I want you to see that you've also done quite a bit of work already in terms of addressing some of the issues that arose from the recommendations in the report. And I think that Karen has been out doing a ton of training all summer and into this opening of the school year. And so you'll see that throughout that. We've also seen policy work that's already been done by the board. You accepted a sexual harassment policy at your last meeting. And so there's a lot of things in here, but a lot of it is around training for our staff, administrators, also helping with reporting, making sure that the reports are done properly. But most important, that people have access to this, so that if they do have a concern, there is a process in which they can have that concern that they have addressed. Whether it's in a form of bullying, whether it's harassment, whatever that might look like. And so this tool that we developed, I think you can see that we've got quite a bit of work into it, and we will continue to use that as our roadmap. I'd like tonight, after tonight, I'd like to be able to post that. Karen is developing her own web page for this information, so we'd like to post this so that people can actually see, well, what are you doing with that? What did you do with the report? Did you pay attention to the recommendations? So with your approval as a preliminary, I'd like to be able to post that so that the community can see that we've responded to those recommendations.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So Kathleen, without digging too deep into this right away, one of the recurring themes that came up last year and the year before was people feeling safe about reporting. And I noticed that that's in the matrix here. It's in the, it has recommendations and it has people responsible. That's going to be an ongoing training, isn't it? Isn't that what we decided at the end of last year, that kind of training about getting people comfortable to change the culture about how they feel about reporting, who they can report to, what will happen if they do? Are those things continuing this year?
No, that's a great point. That's ongoing. That's going to continue throughout the year. That has to happen annually. That must happen annually. You know, you have new staff, new information, latest research on things. You need to stay on top of this kind of thing, and so I would absolutely say it's ongoing and it will continue throughout the year. You know, one of the things that they did was put, Karen Fish Anderson has an office here, right in the building. It's kind of off a little bit. It's a quiet area up in where the auditorium entrance is. And it's a nice place for kids to go. It's a safe place, it's quiet, you know, so that, you know, they do need to feel like they have a place that they can go and do reporting or whatever. And so they've tried to address that too, Tom.
So pardon me for belaboring this, but the measure of success for that particular item about creating a culture of school environment where community members feel safe to report. The measure of success in that matrix says that there'll be increased reporting, which would be wonderful if we found that. It also talks about a survey or assessment at the end of the school year. What I'd prefer to see, and I'm only Tom Croto, one person, that we have a survey at the middle of the school year and see if we've started to fix things before the end of the school year, when we say, oh hell, we didn't really measure up. You know, maybe we can check it in January, and then if we need to, do some things to pick it up. Just thinking about that.
Thank you. Mr. Crush.
Yeah, so first of all, I think Mr. Croto is correct. I think we should do some type of assessment in January. And I guess this ties into the question that I was going to ask. And I'm sure we do, so pardon me for asking the obvious. Do we track and trend the numbers of reports, the numbers of reports to the police, the numbers of reports to DHHS. Do we trend that metric to see if it's going up, down, or anything?
Well, every year, annually, we have a pretty extensive safety report that we must fulfill for every building, covering all of the issues that you just talked about, you know, from drugs in school to weapons to sexual harassment to any racial issues, racial bullying. All of that data is collected in all of the buildings, and then at the end of the year, we have a responsibility to send that to the department. That information is all posted publicly on the department's website. We also keep track of all of the abuse and neglect reports that we file with the Division of Children and Family Services. So we have all of that data.
So if a Chuck Crush teacher at Runlet Middle School called and made a report on a kiddo that I thought was being abused at home, would we track or trend that?
We keep track of the report. We have the report. There is occasions where we don't know the end result, okay, because it's a family issue. But no, we have numbers. Yes, to answer your question, we have numbers. We have files for each school, so that each school, first of all, any report comes through my office, so I see the report. And then that report is then taken in a file that we keep in the administrative office, so that we can go back and look if there's any patterns that we see in families, students, in particular issues. You know, they could be particular issues with students.
But and I feel badly, but not to belabor the point as well. But I guess my question is, so the reports come to your office, but do we have a culture where a teacher or any staff member, a para, or anyone, a cafeteria worker, a bus driver, do we have a culture where they know they're mandatory reporters and feel comfortable they don't have to like run it through you or anything, that they can call themselves and actually have an obligation?
Right, that's part of your policy. Your policy is very clear that anybody is a reporter, and part of the training that Karen did this year under reporting was exactly that, so that anybody could report. They don't need to go through the principal's office or a guidance counselor or me or anybody. They can be the reporters. Good point.
Thank you.
David.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. I was just curious, in terms of Karen Fisher-Anderson, what has she been doing from the standpoint of training? And I don't get a sense that she's as public maybe as I thought she might be to the community. I mean, maybe this is just me. I'm not really sure. I don't have a clear understanding of what she's been doing and moving this forward, I guess.
Right. Well, I can assure you that she's been very
busy, but I just don't know.
She's done training. Let's see, she did training with bus drivers. She did training with food service.
Okay.
She's done all of the training with all of the staff. She did training this summer on different topics like grooming and reporting in summer training, and worked with administrators on all of that. So that her focus right now has been pretty much all to the staff, the employees of the district, all employees in the district. And we have those now on video so that if somebody missed it, they can see it. I think the next steps for her will be when the students come back, and then she begins to interact with our student bodies, especially at our high school and our middle school, where she'll be able to interact with the youngsters. She hasn't done that yet. That's clear.
Right. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
I want to make one other comment, though, but I think is really important. I think there needs to be some community presentations. I think we all have to learn and be aware around our surroundings and aware of issues that would impact our students, our children, our families.
Well,
I anticipate and expect that she will do that over the course of this year.
Well, I think sometimes the taxpayers wonder, we hired this person, and what is she doing? And her presence in the community may be, as you suggested, upped a little bit.
I think that will help.
Thank you.
Superintendent, and then Gina, just to Mr. Parker's question, is that on our agenda with our city and community committee?
No, but it is now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms.
Okay,
Cannon.
okay.
I'm on that committee,
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to sort of answer some of what Mr. Parker was asking, the new policy that went into effect,
Right.
that was required by the federal Department of Education, the amount of work that went into translating what the Department of Education required into a readable, and it's dense and it's big and it's long, but translating what the Department of Education wanted into something that we could use, I'm sure was an enormous black hole of her time, because I've looked at what DOE wanted,
Yeah.
and I couldn't have done what she did. I mean, even with my legal background, I couldn't have done what she did. I mean, it must have taken 30, 40, 50
Title IX
hours
reauthorization
of multiple lawyers. Yeah,
No,
it's
I
just-
do understand that reauthorization is very, very complicated and thick and well thought out, though. There's a lot of good material in there,
Yeah.
for sure.
And she worked with the New Hampshire School Board Association lawyer as well as school lawyers in the state to develop that plan. So she put a lot of time into that, and,
Yeah,
and
it's
it was
big.
very comprehensive. So, great point.
Thank you.
We needed it. Am I?
I don't see any other questions, so
Okay.
please continue,
All right, I'm going to
Superintendent.
go.
Thank
I'm
you
going to
very
try to
much.
finish up here. You've heard enough of me, I'm sure. There's just a couple of other items. Somebody asked me about the communication consultant that I asked permission from you to be able to use, and I have to say that it was a great assistance to me. You have to remember, I was only in the district a couple of weeks, and I had to deal with a very important document that was being released. It was critical that it was done right. And I used her as a consultant to help me to craft those communications that I put out into the community, whether it was through with the parents, the teachers, meeting with the teachers, making sure that I crafted my words carefully. It was straight information, but I wanted to be very clear. That was a very trying time for everyone, and having been in the district for about 5 days, I felt I needed some support, and so she did help me with that. But I've only used about 15 hours of the total 35 hours that I asked for. That's all it is for the year. So I've been very careful, and Jack keeps a good eye on it for me, so I know how much money and how much hours I have. But I really feel like I need to be able to use her when I'm doing some things around any outbreaks. Think about that, how important that communication is going to be if there's an outbreak and I need to communicate. The regular communications around this COVID and the things that are happening, I've been doing. I'm very comfortable doing that. But when it comes to that, you want to be very, very careful, because you're not talking about just local parents and the community. You're talking about state news, and you know how it goes. It really spreads. So she's going to help me with that when I'm ready for that, as well as the work around anti-racism. I think there's a lot of critical pieces, and so maybe you have a controversy. Maybe it's around the SRO officer, and you have a lot of discussion and debate. I want to make sure that the information is correct and that I'm communicating that well, using as many outlets and media, social media outlets as I possibly can. So that's how she helps me, and it's been great. And I still have more than half of the hours left to use carefully for the rest of the year. So I don't know if that helps anybody to...
Oh, thank you.
And last but not least is one of the things we've talked throughout my presentation tonight is around training, and is so important for our teachers. We've heard about Zoom, and we heard about reporting, and we've heard about all of the things. And so I asked Donna if she would highlight the training that has happened since July, because I think the community needs to know the efforts that our teachers and our administrators have made to get good training. So Donna, would you do that?
Okay, just briefly, and as I speak, I think Jack will just push through the document a little bit. You have the document in your packet or in your online file, and maybe you could go, Jack, to the part with the different workshops, and I'll just give a quick overview. But so we've been doing, we're always doing professional learning. Our staff, like our students, are hopefully lifelong learners, and so professional learning opportunities have been offered all through the summer. We took a few weeks off in June, and then we started up with a PD, a professional development newsletter, going out weekly as things were added on. Workshops were presented by our own staff, by community partners, and also we brought in connections with some organizations out of the district, including the state, which ran a whole series of trainings. VLAX did trainings, VHS, another online learning system did as well. Some of the workshops required in-district sign-up, some didn't. Over 350 participants signed up through our system, which was it's not nearly as many as actually did these things, because we didn't require them all to sign up in the conventional way. So this is just a compilation of all the workshops by date. And I'll just set, some topics, things like managing change amidst chaos, the first 6 weeks of school, summer mindfulness, setting up a virtual classroom, interactive tools for remote learning, synchronous and asynchronous learning, how to leverage both in person and online. I would say the big topic areas were social-emotional learning, social-emotional well-being for staff, mindfulness and support, both for supporting students and for them processing their own concerns and worries. So that was a whole domain, I would say. And then in addition, teaching, obviously, teaching online, teaching remotely, teaching strategies for that. There was very significant training around technology, some in a more general formative assessment in the remote classroom, critical skills for online teaching, some very specific to tools. As Kathleen said, we added Zoom, so there was some Zoom training going on, and then also other apps that teachers had asked for and were interested in that we ended up purchasing and then doing training on. So those were going on all summer. Once school started, our first 6 days, all of our staff participated in trainings on on reporting abuse and neglect. On suicide prevention, there's now a law that requires at least 2 hours of training per school year on suicide prevention. We partnered with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Concord. We had piloted this summer their new online training program, and then we used it with all of our staff in the first 6 days of school. Title IX, as Kathleen said, Karen Fisher-Anderson's work on sexual harassment reporting, on bullying. That was each of these were laid out in very specific timelines over the 6 days in each of the schools. COVID-19 safety procedures and protocols. Our nursing staff, led by our new coordinator, Ann Lanny, who's done a fantastic job, as have all the nurses, led training in each of the buildings on safety procedures per our protocols. We also did training in the 6 days on remote learning supports. Our key, we use Google Classroom, and we use Seesaw for preschool through grade 2, and Zoom, and some additional level-specific applications. We've put a lot of emphasis on math. If you read the research or thinking about remote learning, math is something we're very concerned about, math learning. So we've done a lot of focus on math, and again, on social-emotional learning. As we go forward, the PD, we've taken a little bit of time off in these first few days, but we'll be presenting our PD weekly newsletter going forward. There's some work that we did this summer that staff have asked to continue. The piece on processing, how to deal with the pandemic as adults. So one of our folks, we first knew her when she was working at Riverbend, and she's now an independent consultant, but doing some work for us. She'll be offering some ongoing weekly opportunities, also math on an ongoing basis. One of our responsive classroom trainers is doing a first 6 weeks by actually doing the first 6 weeks with staff. So a variety of things continue on as school gets going. Happy to answer questions. That was a lot. I hope I was slow enough. Yes.
My head.
Yes, it does.
Mr. Crush, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. So these are great. I really, really like a lot of these. Do we know what percentage of faculty took advantage of the programs in the summer?
I didn't do it by percentage. And as I said, we didn't. So remember that during the summer, people are on vacation. They're not paid to work. So not everyone does take advantage. But we have a pretty long tradition of a lot of people doing professional learning this summer. As I said, it was a little over 350 people who actually signed up through us, and we didn't require everybody to sign up because often they were links that people could just go to. And I think that's a great underestimation. So lots of people, I would say, ed assistants, tutors, and teachers were the three big categories of people, although it really was open to anybody. So
did we pay for the modules and the classes? I was looking at the prices as you were scrolling through.
So if people wanted to do those things, we have funds available for them. Some of them we paid for certain numbers of slots, and some of them people could use funds that they had available to them by what the district budget offers to them. So both options.
Thank you.
We pay our staff to present. A lot of these were presented by our own staff, which is great because I think teachers often like to hear from their colleagues.
Thank you.
I think so. You hear me? Okay. No problem. Donna, thanks for that information. It's good to know the type of training that's going on, but I just wonder, is this part of people's professional development plans to as Chuck is suggesting, documenting, who is taking these classes and is it part of an overall plan for these individual teachers?
Yeah, so every person who's certified has to do an individual plan. It's a 3-year cycle. And so those are recorded in an online application that we use. It's called My Learning Plan. And they establish goals, and then they accrue the requisite hours over the 3 years to recertify. And so
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that is one way. I could actually go through that whole system and pull out what everybody did this summer. I haven't had time to do that. So I was just going on our links because we have a sign-up system for workshops in a general way. But so yes, it's true that every individual has a plan that they're making, and they have to. They work on doing professional learning hours in their certification area, and then in an area that we call the district goals or school goals. And so often a lot of these you'll see them in the folks' school goals, although if I was a school counselor, a psychologist, a therapist, in our district, some of these other things might do well in my certification goal as well, and certainly all the work we've been doing in math and other teaching areas. So.
Thank you.
And I know some of your staff, I think, have participated too, because we did offer it to some of our partners in the community. So it was nice to see some other folks joining us from different schools.
Mr. Croto.
So this may be for Donna, Kathleen, or Pam. I saw Pam can't get away over there. So what's our confidence level that our staff are really feeling real good about remote teaching? And in terms of use of programs, use of technology, I guess in those two respects particularly, are we... I'll put my hand out there first. I hear from time to time that teachers are still struggling a bit, trying to figure out how to get this all to work. And here we are doing it, and I know there's a learning curve.
Oh, sure,
I'm not silly
sure.
about that, but tell me what you think, Pam.
Yeah, Pam, go ahead with that.
Hold on, Pam.
No.
Okay. Whoa. I think teachers are nervous, and, there was a lot of apprehension before today. I think the district was in a good position. We've already had one-to-one devices in grades 1 through 12, so the teachers have been using a lot of these tools. For example, Google Classroom and Seesaw. There are many districts in New Hampshire where teachers were suddenly learning how to use Google Classroom. So like anything, you have, sort of a curve. You have the majority in the middle, and you have the the high achievers, the early adopters, and then some of the laggards. But I feel like they've done pretty well.
And I guess the follow-up, Donna, is that if I'm a teacher or I'm a principal and 3 of my 5th grade teachers are really struggling, what's the access that they have to get some help?
Well, we have the technology integrators in each school, and I always call that our secret sauce. Actually, they're called digital learning specialists now. I keep having to catch myself. But very few school districts in New Hampshire have one of those technology coaches in every single school. It is really, really powerful. And so that coach is accessible to the teachers in that school and can help them with anything in that realm of educational software.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Now my confidence is higher.
Good question, Tom. Any other questions? Thank you, Assistant Superintendent.
I'm finished.
Thank you.
Is there something else? Is there any questions? You can see that I've been very lucky. I've been here, 3 months now, and maybe not quite that long, but I've been really lucky to be surrounded by some very talented teachers and administrators and principals, and really it's great to work with them because they do work hard, and we have some great programs, so I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by that talent. Makes a world of difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at our agenda, I am assuming that Mr. Cashman is next.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. I would like to give everyone a little update on our HVAC system. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion in the media. CDC and the ASHRAE folks have published guidelines related to COVID-19 around HVAC systems. So there's several key points I just want to mention briefly tonight. Is they recommend conducting an assessment of the HVAC systems. They also recommend, as part of the guidance, to bring in 100% outside fresh air, filtrated air, but all from the outside. They also ask that you measure your indoor air quality. So before I get into a little bit of it, I just want to tell you, we've done the background. Some of you board members have been here. About 3 years ago, we hired Train Industries to come in, and every single quarter for the last 3 years, they come in and change over 1,000 of our air filters every single quarter. So what that does is it really, and some of the preliminary results of what I'm about to tell you will verify that these MERV-rated filters that we have in our school district and all of our air handlers are really doing their job, and they're really filtering out all of the particulate matter that needs to be filtered out. One of the other things we have is our building automation company called Siemens Technologies. They are the brains behind the controls. So what I've had them do about 3 weeks ago, per CDC guidelines, is to turn on all of our systems, like I mentioned earlier, 24/7 bringing in outside air. Additionally, the CDC recommends districts provide acceptable indoor air quality for all of its building occupants. So over the last 2 weeks, I brought in the Lawson Group. They're an industrial hygienist. They're local here to Concord. We deal with them every year on all sorts of other types of testing. But they measured specifically to ensure whether we meet or don't meet high-quality air in our buildings, interior air. They measured certain criteria. One was carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, temperature, relative humidity. They measure indoor airborne particles that might not be captured in the filtration system. They conducted mold spore testing both inside but also outside on the rooftops just to see what we were dealing with. They did a visual inspection and assessment of all of our air handlers, and they opened up the units. I've been with them for the last 2 weeks. We went to every single HVAC unit in the entire district. We opened them all up, and we checked the filters to make sure their condition. We write the dates on the filters when they are changed, just to make sure that we have that quarterly changeover that we're expecting. They also, additional services as part of the work that we've had them do is verify the MERV rating. That MERV stands for Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value ratings of filters and the frequency of the air changes. Again, checking the dates and looking at the conditions of them. This week, I met with them this morning. This week, they'll have a published, finished report for us. And I talked to Mr. Richards tonight before the meeting started. What we'd like to do is next Monday, the 14th at 5:30, we have a Capital Facilities Committee meeting, and would like to focus our efforts on having the Lawson report come out, people from the Lawson Group come in and explain the details of the report. Not trying to give you a spoiler alert, but we do have some good news. The initial test results on all of those categories that we talked about, as well as the mold reporting, all are well within the acceptable indoor air quality ratings for the in the standard in the industry. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Cashman, for the Capital Facilities meeting, would you please contact, or when you talk with the Lawson Group or with the Siemens Group, the people who have done your testing, and just answer the question, and perhaps you can answer it now, is with 100% outside air and the additional flow of air through those filters, will our filter change regimen be adequate, or would they recommend more frequent changes? And I don't expect you to have the answer
tonight, but it's a good...
but I would like you to ask that question before
Sure.
the Capital Facilities meeting, if you could.
Well, let's definitely ask that question, but I can tell you I met with them this morning about 8:30, and we reviewed the preliminary report. And what was verification to that point that you're asking is when we opened up the air filters, we saw when they were last changed the previous quarter, and you could see the condition. So, you know, there's several areas like up at Millbrook, Broken Ground, where there's heavy pine trees, Beaver Meadow, and occasionally you'll see a little bit more pollen collection in those. So it's a good visual representation of what those filters are actually filtering out, but we will definitely ask that question.
Thank you. Mr. Croto.
Thank you. So Matt, with additional consultation from folks, with additional testing, additional filters, and whatever I don't know yet, are we looking at some seriously increased costs in the future, or are you feeling it's okay? Or tell me what you think.
I feel real good. Again, we put in the budget, as some of you will remember, Tom, you were on the board when we brought forward that we wanted to bring professional services in because we knew the importance of changing air filters on a quarterly basis. When I talk to other districts, I mean, they wish they could change them that frequently, but I know that indoor air quality is such an important aspect of what we need to do for safety and people's health in the building that we we exercise that. We also have trained when they're in changing the filters, along with our own maintenance folks. We do, preventive maintenance, and we make fixes, change sleeves, belts, all sorts of different stuff to keep our equipment up to snuff.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Ms. Cannon?
Yeah. I notice in our board packet, there's a sheet here about mechanical assessment and retro commissioning study.
Correct.
And the last item is making recommendations for future upgrades with potential UV, I'm assuming UVC.
UVC and
put into the
bipolar
system.
ionization.
Yeah. Is that something that Lawson Group will make a recommendation?
They won't. So what I wanted to do, and I talked to Mr. Richards before the meeting tonight, is when we have the Capital Facilities Committee, I want the Lawson Group to come in and talk about what they have done, and we're going to publish the report publicly on our website. We'll get it out to the board, let people digest it, and then when we have that meeting on the 14th, next Monday, I'd bring forward our next recommendation, which would be what is in your board packet, to bring a mechanical engineer to assess all of the systems, see how they're performing. Some systems are only 8 years old that we have, and for 3 schools, and some are, pushing 30 years. So let's get a good look at how those are performing right now and all the years of maintenance that we've done. And then also, as we move forward and we're dealing with COVID and, infectious diseases, let's see what recommendations are out there. UVC, like you mentioned, and bipolar ionization is another technique that is being introduced and has been out there for a little bit of time as well to HVAC. Looks like Mr. Crush has a question.
Mr. Crush.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, nice job, Matt. One question, with the older systems especially, we're 100% able to have the outside air come in the way the CDC recommends, even at schools like, say, Runlet? We do.
I
was just worried about the older systems. I didn't know if that was possible mechanically.
Well, we control them, we program them too, but again, remember, over the age of these systems, we are always maintaining them. They break down, they have preventive maintenance conducted on them. So, we're asking this equipment to run at 100%, and so far, so good. Again, I think these test results are going to show that. But, back to Ms. Cannon's comment, when we talk about, let's call it phase 2 of a mechanical engineering assessment, then I think, Chuck, we might be able, by conducting that service, we might be able to get a true evaluation of the conditions of our equipment, and then we can plan for the future. It's been on the capital improvement and the 5- and 10-year plan now for quite some time. So, hey, this is a good time to really check it out and see what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cashman? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cashman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Superintendent, is that the summary of recognitions and reports? I don't know if Ms. Richards has anything to say about the first day of school, but I don't think there's a lot of activities or events that she has to report today, but if there is anything additional?
Just briefly say. Yeah, that is essentially correct. School just started. First day, I talked a little bit about it. Obviously different for every student, but I had a successful experience. We're getting back into, the normal routine isn't exactly the right way to put it because it's a little different. But yeah, at the high school, we're getting back to clubs virtually in the next week or so, using our Wednesdays to do that. We're going to start our CHS Live program again with students. So we're making the best of what we have virtually. And I'm looking forward to being back in school. And as we move on in the next couple of meetings, having more to report to you on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're at a point now where we are right about at 2 hours into the meeting. So if the board would like to take a 5-minute recess, to
Yes, please.
get to be able to get a drink of water. It's 8:55 right now. Would the board please return in 5 minutes, right at 9 o'clock, and we will resume with agenda item number 6, public comment. Thank you. 5-minute recess. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I will remind everyone that, when you're not speaking, please make sure that you have muted your microphone. We look forward to hearing from everyone who has something to speak. If someone has already made the point, don't feel that you need to restate it. You can just agree we do listen to everyone. In addition, I want to be sure that everyone knows that they can email any comments or questions to the board or to the info. What is the info address, Jack? ConcordInfo@sau8.org. Yep. Thank you. And with that, Jack, if we have any, well, first of all, let me ask, I don't think we have any public comment, anyone raising their hand here, but does anyone in the auditorium have public comment? No, Jack, let's go to any comment from outside, either by phone or by Teams.
And this is agenda items only right now.
These are agenda, thank you, Ms. Higgins. Yes, these are agenda items only. There will be a time for public comment on any item later on in the meeting. Jack?
Okay. First hand, Kimberly Wood. Please unmute yourself and go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking the time tonight to allow for public comment. I appreciate all your continued efforts. I just had a quick, I think it's more of a question and a concern, and I hope this is an appropriate time to share it. If not, I can certainly wait. I know many schools here in the district today, children were allowed back in the building if they have an IEP or a 504 plan. However, that is not the case at Runlet. Those children were supposed to go back today. However, last week we received an email saying it needed to be pushed out until at least the 21st for 2 weeks. So I was just curious why that is. And my biggest concern is 2 weeks going to turn into 4 weeks and 4 weeks to 6? Just, realizing there is a need for these children to be in the building, and what is the plan to get them back in the building sooner than later?
Okay, I don't think we're going to be answering questions. However, Superintendent, could you provide some information to the Runlet principal? And Kimberly, if you would please contact the Runlet principal, she should be able to answer your question. So thank you very much for that comment.
Yeah, that needs to be ironed out, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So please reach out to the principal, and I'm sure she'll be able to answer your question. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Jack?
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack?
Numbers on, and there's no other hands raised.
Are there any other public comments or questions? Sometimes it takes
Jim,
a minute. Let's
Jim,
wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Kate Fry is trying to raise her hand, but she's having some challenges, but she would wish to make public comment.
Yourself and make your comment. I see that she's listed there, but she's not on mute, so if she's having trouble, I don't know how. I can't unmute somebody.
So Ms. Fry, if you want to call in or try to log off and log in, we will, take your question.
I think I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that. I was muted. And thank you very much for allowing us to speak. And I could not figure out how to raise my hand, so that might be an issue with others. I do have some comments. I do understand that if I have questions, they may not be answered. But all these items were on the agenda. My first question has to be about regarding the work plan that was presented on the Perkins report. And it's a very detailed work plan, which I appreciate, and I think many do as well. But under recommendations, under certain categories, it just says things like agree in part, disagree, the district's decision for requiring all sexual misconduct allegations to go through the district. And the comments and recommendations is agree in part. And some comments are just disagreeing. So who makes those decisions? After all, so much work was put into these policies, and who's agreeing or disagreeing, and what will the final outcome be? It's really unclear in this recommendation. My second point is I did come on late. I did see in the agenda item that a board member was appointed in the interim of Ms. Patterson's leave, but I have no idea who that person is. It wasn't on the agenda because I came in late. I don't know who that is. And if we're talking about building transparency, why wouldn't the community be informed of this decision? I understand that the board can allow this, but I would think that we would want to know who would be serving this very important time period of 4 months. And will there also be an opportunity for the community to ask this new member questions of their position, seeing that some really important votes will be coming? So I really hope that the board revisits this and discusses how the community will be able to, first of all, find out who this person is, find out where we can get more information, and what her views are on certain points. I would suggest a public forum. And then lastly, on the consultant, I was still very disappointed that we didn't really have a lot of information on what the PR consultant has done, except for the Superintendent Murphy reporting to the announcement about the final report being disclosed earlier this year. If that was an example of their work, it's I would say very disappointing and absolutely not worth the amount of money we're paying per hour. That there was no direct communication to the families or to students. It was all posted on the website. The blame was left squarely on the perpetrator, which is absolutely the case, but also this school district has yet to acknowledge and take responsibility for huge leadership and systemic failures that led to multiple victims within our district. And if that letter was an example of how you will build a bridge in this community and work on communications, it was an incredible disappointment. So those are my comments, and I do hope that my questions are responded to at some point.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fry. I can tell you earlier in the meeting that Maureen Redmond-Skura was appointed and approved by the board, or actually nominated and then approved by the board. The remaining questions, I believe, are a little too detailed for here, but Superintendent Murphy has jotted them down. So thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Dunn, do we have anyone else waiting?
No.
Let's wait just a few minutes, because sometimes it takes a little bit. For those people who are using Teams and don't know how to raise your hand in the control bar, and if you can see me right there, in the control bar there is a hand, and if you click on that, that will change color, and Mr. Dunn will see that you have your hand up. So thank you. Thank you for showing me that. So you may also call by telephone, and the number is on our school district webpage. Yes, Ms. Cannon.
If you are accessing the meeting on a smartphone, that option to raise your hand is not available. So if people want to make comment, I would strongly encourage them to use a laptop or a computer and not their smartphone, because that raise your hand option is not available on a smartphone.
Thank you for that information. In addition, they could call in and do it as well. We do want to hear from as many people who would like to make comments. Mr. Dunn, anyone else?
No.
Well, we do have another comment period at the end of our meeting. Not seeing any additional comments. I will move on to personnel.
Liza's got a comment behind you.
Sorry, right behind my head, of course. So, Ms. Poirier, please, go ahead.
Just that if Jack can check the chat, there are a few people in the chat who are raising their hands there, if that's a possibility.
Mr. Dunn, can you check the chat and see if there's someone there trying to contact us to let us know they have a question?
Okay, Jonathan Lax, having trouble raising hand on mobile version of Teams. So if Jonathan can unmute himself and wants to speak.
Yeah, this is Jonathan Lax. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lax.
So I sent in my comments by email in advance, so I don't need to repeat them here. And I don't know if you're taking public comment later in the meeting on whether we're taking a vote to go back to a hybrid model or in-person learning. I think I've made my views on the matter pretty clear in my email, multiple emails to board members. I appreciate that the board is now at least looking at the guidance offered by the state, and hope that the board would start following that guidance as it tries to decide whether to go back to hybrid. As I understand I forget the name of the committee voted on, and the superintendent recommended it. Is that on the agenda for later tonight?
The instructional committee has a report later tonight, and will be making the recommendations from their meeting. So thank you, Mr. Lax.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dunn, anyone else?
No. Well, maybe now we do. Hold on. Rebecca Duclos-McHugh, if you would like to speak, please unmute yourself and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, I know you said it wasn't necessary to repeat points that were already made, but I wanted to reiterate the comment about the severity of concern with the non-special ed services at Runlet. As a couple people ago, the woman commented, other schools in the district have figured this out and kids are getting services. And for students who we're having compensatory education meetings about because they're drastically behind because of gaps through, no fault of anyone because of remote learning in the spring, it's important that they be not just brought back for services, but also be provided what they actually need. Not like, well, it works for us to make these groups, and so that's what we'll offer. So several of us have communicated with Runlet administration already, and that has not really achieved any change in the status quo. So I guess I'm reiterating what the prior caller said, because the board should know that this is a concern of many parents, and we're all feeling quite frustrated for our kids. So thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, and could you repeat your name so that we have it for our minutes?
Rebecca Duclos-McHugh.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Sure, thanks.
Mr. Dunn, do we have anyone else?
So far, no. Nope.
Okay, thank you for everyone who has who commented tonight. As I said previously, we do have another public comment opportunity at the end of the meeting. So, moving on to personnel. Superintendent, is Mr. Prince going to be presenting to us? Thank you. So, Mr. Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. First item on the agenda is to approve a professional leave of absence. This is an English teacher at the high school who will be taking an English position at CRTC. So I would ask that you approve that. You'll later see her nomination for your approval as well.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the leave of absence for the English teacher at
at the high school.
Yeah, I will make that motion that, I think it's, do we name names here, or?
I would,
It's in the board packet.
it is in the packet. I
think
defer to
it's,
Mr. Prince as to whether or not.
Ms. York?
We can, yeah, it's Elizabeth York, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd make a motion that we accept the movement of position for Ms. York.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Croto, do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Second, moved by Mr. Croto, seconded by Mr. Crush. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any, would Ms. Higgins call the roll for
Yeah.
the vote?
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond Skura?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
9-0 this time.
Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. So from August, this got pushed off in the August meeting. We have 3 confirmations, which is the last, sort of these types of contracts that we've issued. So I'd like you to just review and approve these confirmations ahead of you. Megan Birch is the English teacher at Concord High School. This is a one-year-only position. She's taking the place of 2 teachers who are going on into other positions. So it's a 60% position, step 14 of the Masters plus 30 track, which equates to $52,982 per year. Elizabeth O'Neill, an English teacher at Concord High. This is a 20% one-year-only position on step 3 of the Masters track at $54,611. And Rebecca Dutcher, a guidance counselor at Abbott Downing, step 2 of the Masters track, $52,046.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the 3 positions recommended?
I'll make the motion to approve the 3 positions recommended by Mr. Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Crush. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? Yes, Ms. Cannon.
I'd just like a clarification. So I'm looking at Miss O'Neill, and it has absolutely nothing to do with her, actually. But 20%, so her salary is 20% is the 54,000, or it's 20% of the 54,000?
It would be 20% of the 54,000.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. This is a 20% of that position is 1 year only. So it is a full position. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's a full position, 20% of which is 1 year only.
Okay, so at the end of the year, she'd go back to 0.8?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wasn't understanding.
No, you're absolutely right. That's a good question. I want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Other questions or discussion? Not seeing any. Ms. Higgins, can you call the vote?
Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond Skura?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. That's approved.
Thank you. And now we have Elizabeth York's nomination for the CRTC English teaching position, 40% and 1 year only at $35,322.
I move we accept Ms. York's position in the CRTC.
Okay, the motion is made by Ms. Higgins. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion with regards to Ms. York's CRTC position? Not seeing any. Ms. Higgins, will you call a roll call?
I will. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond Skura?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
9-0.
Thank you. That's approved. Mr. Prince?
Okay, yes, and now we have some fall coaching nominations. We are moving forward with that. So we have 3 new coaches. Bienvenu Kijuju, a boys freshman soccer coach at Concord High at a stipend of $2,474. Amy Montanez, a girls JV coach at Concord High at $3,149. And Austin Brahillo, a girls freshman soccer coach at Concord High at $2,249. The Excel spreadsheet behind these nominations are returning coaches. And I know sometimes you prefer to approve the new ones and then the existing ones, or however you want to do that, but that's what those are in front of you. Those folks are returning.
Okay. Ms. Cannon?
Mr. Richards, you asked me to point out where I saw the mistake. I
Yes.
don't know whether Mr. Kanaza is the same as Mr. Kiguyu.
Mr.
but-
Prince, could you hear the question?
I did hear the question, and he did have I think he had a hyphenated name, and so we might not have put that on this Excel sheet. So they are one and the same.
Okay, just,
Thank you, Ms. Cannon, for so astutely recognizing that and bringing it to our attention. That's good. Are you satisfied with Mr.
yeah,
Prince's answer?
I couldn't imagine there were 2 people in our district whose first name was Bienvenu, so.
Thank you very much for clarification, and
Good catch.
can we make sure that that's correct and clear in the minutes? That being said, do I have a motion for the approval of these 3 coaching positions?
I'll move that they be approved.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Ms. Cannon and second by Mr. Parker. Thank you. Is there any discussion?
So this is just for the 3 new ones?
Yes,
Okay,
these
great.
are the 3 that were just presented, the new ones. So, not seeing anyone's hand up, virtually or in person. Ms. Higgins, can you please call the roll call vote?
Yes, I can. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Mr. Crush is going to abstain based on the fact that nothing to do with any of these folks. I'm sure they're wonderful coaches, but I voted no on sports in the last meeting, so for that, I am going to abstain my vote.
Thank you. I'll say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond-Skura?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
The positions are approved with 1 abstention. Mr. Prince, do you have anything else for us tonight?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Croto.
Excuse me, I was going to say, Lyndon, I will verify that name for you in the morning. Okay, I'll make sure that we get the name right.
Thank you.
Mr. Croto.
So, Mr. Prince, before you go, did you go?
I did not.
Okay. Couple of quick questions. A couple of weeks ago,
I was going to say, was that a test, Tom?
no, not at all. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you about how many people we had that were not coming back to school, and I think the number was somewhere over 300 and something. And since then, you've had sort of a stop date for being able to ask. So what is that final number right now?
Well, we did have over 350 people in one fashion or another request in some form to work remotely. Jack and I are working on the formal response to these folks. Some have been approved to work remotely. Some we need to notify that if they don't come in, we have no work for them remotely, at which point they would be furloughed. And we're going to notify these folks tomorrow, or that's our goal. We're going to give them until the 18th, which is a week from Friday, to talk with their building administration to work out a schedule. If they're able to come in, then that'll work. If not, then in some cases, they will be furloughed. There are others who cannot work because of childcare issues, and they will be placed on an FFCRA leave of absence, and they'll be paid 2/3 of their pay, up to $200, and that's for a 12-week period. So there's a group of folks, a handful, maybe 10 to 12, that we need to notify them of that. And then there's another few that will be approved to work remotely while we're in the remote mode, so or the remote model. So once we go hybrid, that whole thing could change, and we'll have to address those issues at that time. So that's all I've been doing.
I can only imagine. Thank you for all of that. I'm sure that is
You're welcome.
just yeoman's task. So Kathleen, I'll turn to you now with the sort of follow-up question. If we were to go to, and this may come later on tonight, but if we were to go to a hybrid model, how are we doing for staff?
It's a great question. It's an important question,
And if
right?
you don't know that right now, that's quite all right, too.
I think that we will have a better feel tomorrow
Okay.
after we go through the list, but it's really been kind of an interesting journey on this, because a lot of people took the option to remote after the vote by the board. But they're in work. They came in. I mean, people with doctor's notes, and they came in. They want to be in school. So I think they did that as a way to protect themselves down the road. If something should happen, they wanted to go back to remote. I mean, I just had a principal tell me, actually Runlet had 35 teachers in there. We observed teachers teaching today in their remotely, but from their classroom. So Tom, to answer, be more specific, we think we're going to be okay, all right, based on what we've seen. We'll have final numbers tomorrow. That was our task with Donna, Jack, myself, and Larry.
So that's something you could give us in your
And I will do in my weekly report, yeah, when I
something like that,
send you out
sure.
something on Friday or Saturday.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that question is going to be important as we move into a discussion later on tonight, and so I don't mean to push it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Cannon.
Sorry, do we know if that information will be available by the time of the instructional committee meeting?
The one scheduled for tomorrow?
Yeah.
The one that we decided not to have tomorrow?
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I talked.
That's coming, it's
I
coming.
think that'll
We're not
be
there
a
yet.
discussion.
Next discussion, but because we're still kind of figuring everything out, we thought we'd wait and hold it off a little bit longer.
So thank you. I expect that to be a further discussion later today. Am I missing anybody's hand over my head? No. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Prince. The next item on...
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. The next item is a report on the Negotiations Committee. Mr. Crush.
Yes. So this will be a brief report. We met on September 1st. The Negotiations Committee, we had a non-meeting, I believe. It consisted of myself, members of the committee, Jack Dunn, and Larry Brents. So that's kind of the summary of the Negotiations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Crush.
Brevity is not my own name.
Next item is City and Community Relations. Ms. Poinier.
Thank you. This committee met on August 24th with all members present and a few other board members joining us. It was the first time in a while that the committee had met, so with mostly just an overview of where we've been, where we would like to go, and a plan to meet again soon with Mayor Boulay and City Manager Thomas Spell. Also, Superintendent Murphy updated us on meetings that she had had with them. And then also we discussed a proposal by the Abbott Downing Historical Society to partner on future use of the stable building, which we've been discussing for a couple of years now. And I believe that either Superintendent Murphy or Matt Cashman has an update on that. as soon as I am done, which now I'm done. That was brief.
You two are so lucky.
Okay, the superintendent, do we have a further information with regards to this table? Mr. Dunn, are you presenting us that information?
Yeah, sure.
I know you had been meeting with the city. Thank you.
I did. That's okay? All right, I'm not going to screw up because I'm near that, am I? Yeah, so Matt Cashman and I think we put it on an update. We gave you a little history, where we were, and then some next steps. And, what we're looking to do is bring forward to the Capital Facilities Committee. If it's on the agenda for Monday, we will see. We're waiting for some things back from the city. Both Matt and I met with Thomas Bell, the city manager, on the 2nd, and went through a litany of questions that we had developed. And we're just waiting for a response from him. One of the key things that they were looking for has to do with these LCHIP dollars to get funding to renovate that building. It's our understanding that that application was due in June, and then they review the application and site survey in September. So the application process is passed, but also the review of the applications is delayed because of this whole COVID situation. They have delayed that. So that's what we know at this point in time, but we believe we're getting into a place where we're ready to turn that building over to work with the city. And we'll go through some of the details of what that would look like, how we can coexist in an active site that's, 3/4 of the year. But we think it's a wise reuse of that building for anybody that has history here. We've had a couple different projects come forward, and nothing has really rose to the top. This is a very interesting project as it relates to bringing those coaches home to Concord, where they were created. So we think we have a path for you to be able to do that. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Do we have any questions from the board? Mr. Dunn, the board, I know that not only the Capital Facilities Committee, but the actual board has supported this project, this very interesting use of this building. And I know that we were pending on some questions regarding the shared use of, especially that is for the general public, this is the parking lot for the high school, one of the parking lots for the high school. And this will be covered, I assume, during capital facilities?
We're hoping for this Monday if we have the answers. If not, we'll schedule a different meeting to tidy that up.
Then I would assume it would go back to the City and Community Relations Committee, or will it come to the full board? And that may be a question for Ms. Pointy.
Yeah, I mean, you're divesting an asset, so I think there might be a couple things. I don't know if there needs to be a negotiation that might need to happen, because there is going to be a contract to transfer that back. But we'll figure out what that path is once you hear kind of what we have planned. But what we're trying to do is make it coexist between the city with the ownership and us as a partner as we move through this process, because you're looking at you're going to be looking at an active construction site.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Jack, it's my understanding that their society will be paying for the renovations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
You're welcome.
Ms. Pointier,
Thank
do we
you.
have anything else on your report?
We do not. Thank you for that update, and we're looking forward to next steps. It's very exciting.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a report from the Instructional Committee. Ms. Higgins.
Wouldn't I love to say we met, we talked about stuff, and that's all I have to say. But that's not how this one will go. We actually had a wonderful meeting last week. I thought it went pretty well, and people were cooperative and positive. So I'll get to the big piece of it in a moment. We discussed a number of things. Kathleen gave us a pile of information about all sorts of updates on how things were a week ago in terms of returning to school. The remote updates, staffing numbers, returning student counts, how many people had said they were going to be remote or maybe, would come back. I mean, there was a lot of information given. And then we got into talking about strategies and target date. I'm sorry, am I going too fast? Sorry. So after Kathleen gave us significant updates on staffing and students and numbers and such, we got into the specifics of looking at how we could transition into a hybrid model. And so we had a good conversation about that. There was lots of good input and questions from people that were there and some staff members that were listening in on the meeting. We didn't have public comment at this meeting, but we did include other Concord School District staff that could potentially add to what we needed to think about as a committee. So what we came up with and actually voted for the board to approve is a transition to a hybrid model beginning the week of October 5th. And we would start with kindergarten and first grade, which are sort of our newest, most vulnerable newbies, 6th grade and 9th grade, as those different grade levels are all significantly changing their educational experience. 6th and 9th are going into new buildings. Kindergarten and first grade are starting school. We will do that for a week, and then the following week is the week of October 12th. So both of those weeks are 4-day weeks, because we have that 4-day weekend over Columbus Day. And so the second week of October, the rest of the district would return to school in a hybrid form, those who chose to do so. And then we would continue from there. Along with this decision and recommendation are piles of, we discussed this earlier, what Kathleen and the district will do in regard to monitoring COVID cases, student and staff illnesses, what's our procedure for moving forward or pulling back. All of these things were discussed at length and again reviewed earlier tonight by Kathleen. We also talked about professional development, which again Donna did a nice job reviewing tonight. So essentially the instructional committee would like to recommend to the board that procedure, that following a successful September, we transition to hybrid. The same plan that was presented in August, Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday is a flex day. Beginning the week of October 5th for the K1, 6, and 9, and then the full district the following week. And that was essentially the meeting. There were lots and lots of details, and it wasn't a short meeting, but that's the essential piece that came out of it. That's what the instructional committee would like to recommend to the board.
Thank you very much. And is that a motion?
Is that how I would I?
Yes, your recommendation
as the
for us to...
so I move that the board vote to approve the recommendation from the instructional committee that we adopt we transition into a hybrid learning situation starting October 5th with K1, 6, and 9, full district October 12th. The week of October 12th.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that
I'll second
motion?
that.
I'm sorry.
I'll second that. I was in that meeting.
Seconded by Mr. Parker. So moved by Ms. Higgins, seconded by Mr. Parker. Discussion. Yes, Ms. Smith.
I'm not sure if we can add this on or if it's applicable to add on, but I was wondering if maybe we should add the stipulation that the numbers remain as they are now or lower.
Oh, the COVID numbers?
Yes, that we go back on October 5th based on having the data in the hybrid, whichever model we decide, that indicates it's safe to do so.
I don't have a problem with that, only because I think it's intrinsic anyway. I think that's what if we suddenly had a big spike in numbers, I mean, we have the template. Wouldn't we have to follow that anyway? I guess I'm looking at you, Kathleen, because you're the nuts and bolts here. But I think if we suddenly were in the orange zone, we wouldn't be going to hybrid if those things were happening. So I'm happy to clarify it. Gina?
I was going to say, I think even we could deal with a small uptick as long as we're in the sort of the zone where the matrix says go to hybrid, because the community transmission is low and we don't have any cases, or we have minimal cases in the school. I think as long as the two pieces come together in the matrix. I mean, right now we've got 1.5 in Merrimack County. I don't want to say, oh, well, if we have 1.6, we can't go.
Right.
You know, I think as long as we're in the hybrid or better in that matrix between the community transmission and the school transmission. So I don't know, for people who haven't had a chance maybe to look at this, there are 3 different matrices, and you need to take a look at the community matrix and find out where you are, and then the school matrix and find out where you are, and then use those 2 on the decision-making matrix. And I think as long as we're still in the clear on the decision-making matrix, even though the numbers might rise minimally, I don't know that we want to say as long as they stay where they are right now.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Not necessarily that it's the same, but that we're in whatever the designated safe zone is.
And I think,
So if I am hearing you correctly, you're asking to amend the motion to make it so that this is approved as long as the district is in compliance with the parameters in the matrix previously presented for hybrid learning.
Yes, yes.
I hope somebody wrote that down.
well, I'll write it down.
So further comment, first we'll go with Chuck, Mr. Crush.
So, yeah, so let me just set the stage from where my frame of reference. So today I was on a call with the CDC, predicting a possible spike in COVID in October in New England. In addition to that, 3 students at Wyndham, in the Wyndham School District, have tested positive for COVID-19. So I have a lot of, I'm not saying no, but I have a lot of questions. So I guess what I'd like to hear from Superintendent Murphy is talk to me a little bit about our structure and process. I mean, so yeah, the building administrator is going to handle it. I don't know what that means. Like, I really need to understand the detail. I understand the decision matrix, and I do have a question. Should some of these decision matrices and some of these things related to COVID go to the Communications and Policy Committee? Because we're actually creating policy, that we may need the policy for a month, we may need the policy for 6 months, for a year, we don't know. Hope not. With that said, though, I am curious if something should go to policy. But my main question is, for purposes of tonight, is how can we vote on a hybrid model when we're not exactly sure how many teachers are going to be on leave and how many are not? We don't know if we have the staff. I too had the same question, and I would like to hear the answer tonight about Runlet, because it is related to the hybrid model. Why is Runlet not starting for the 21st?
Yes.
So I have a lot of questions, and I feel like those need to be answered before myself and some members of the public are comfortable moving forward.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, okay,
There you
thanks.
go.
Thanks. I hope I can capture all your questions. I think that you can...
I have them written down.
Good, you'll correct me if I've forgotten one. So the first thing is around the matrix that we use and the number of cases. That's what our guide is. I talked about it earlier. You know, based on the data that we received from the state, and we're now moving towards their dashboard, which will help us, and it's very clear, you know, the 3 levels and how many in the community that would, the number would be at what level. So if you have less than 50, you're in a very low category in your community. That's what the dashboard is showing. We don't have that, and it's over a period of 7 days. So we kind of watch those numbers, and obviously we want to keep an eye on our students, and if there's any outbreaks in students and families, we're going to be able to know that because we will be notified by the Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Health. They will notify they actually have a communication strand with our school nurses. So we will know if there's a situation that we need to be aware of. So I don't know if that helps. Should this decision maker, the decision matrix, go to the policy committee? I think that's a choice that the board can make. But I think it's just, I'm not sure it's a policy as much as it is a tool that I would use to help make that decision relative to the data that we receive on a daily basis. And like I said, it is a daily issue. We look at this every single day. I can tell you that last night it was 1.3.
Right.
You know, so I mean, it changes daily. So we keep an eye on that. We keep an eye on the Concord numbers. Now the new dashboard has a layout of every single community in the state. So we look at the Concord numbers.
Okay. So,
and that's what we've been, that's the reason why I made that recommendation to the instruction committee based on all of the data, the hard data that we received. So whether it goes to the policy committee, I'm fine. We have a policy committee coming up on the 16th. We can always bring that to that committee and have them review that. The Runlet issue is, my understanding is they did not start today, but they have every intentions of starting on Thursday and Friday of this week. So I don't know where the 21st came in.
It was an email.
It was in an email. I saw that email too.
I was not privy to that email, and I was not aware of that date. So I can't really answer that question tonight, but you can be assured I'll get some follow-up and I'll get you out an email. But they did not start today. They had some transition issues. No question about that. They've pretty much taken care of that, and we'll work Thursday and Friday with our youngsters. So I want to talk with the principal in the morning and get some clarification.
No, that's fair enough. Just
Yeah.
two questions, and maybe this will help me understand better. So all of a sudden, we go from a low case rate to being in the red zone, and we go 100% remote. How quickly do you envision us doing that? How do we prepare our parents for that reaction? What resources are we going to have? Are we going to have a resource line for them to get information? Because people are going to be afraid. I mean, this breeds a level, you know, I was at a meeting today, you know, you get a cold, including myself, and you think, I have COVID-19. I think that's just where we are. How do we take care of our community in the sense of communication to them, and how do we pivot? Like, you know, do we give 1 day notice, do you envision? Do we give a week's notice? How does that look? That's one question. And then my last question is a really good question that just escaped my mind right now. So I'll get back to you on that one, but I'm sure it was good. But no, how do we do that? I mean, what's our process? How do we communicate that? How do we have the resources? I'm just not real clear on that. And I do remember my question. Do you have any, and I understand you are going to get the answers tomorrow, you and Jack and Larry, but it's kind of hard to vote on something if we don't know if we have the staff to do it.
I believe we have the staff to do it. We're talking, again, based on all the review we did of all the requests that came in from our staff and support staff as well as our teachers. We believe we have enough staff. Now remember, I have to have some staff for remote too. It isn't all in person because we have about, it looks like the latest survey from our parents, about 25% of the people are still leaning towards remote. So I know that I need to have staff for remote. So those teachers, if they've requested remote, they fit the criteria, they will be the remote teachers. And the teachers that have agreed to come in will come in and do the face-to-face. So we feel we can do this, Chuck. Like I said, we've gone through those lists it's a number of times, making sure that we can do that. But there are some that will be remote and some will be in person.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, one more question about going to red. I mean, if it's going to red and we have an outburst, I mean, it's like waiting for a hurricane or a nor'easter. I can't wait a day or two to decide whether we're going to have school or not, right? I can't. I have to make a decision. And so I guess based on my conversations, obviously, with our president and the staff and the hospital, Dr. Noble, all the resources that we have available to us at our fingertips, I can reach out and make that decision. I would never hold back on a decision around the safety of our kids if we were all of a sudden had incredibly elevated numbers, that showed that we were not safe. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Croto, you have a question?
Thank you. So Kathleen, in our, and anyone else from the instructional committee who can help, in our notes from that meeting, of which I participated, there were 3 key points. One of them we've just discussed, and I think with regard to numbers in a matrix, those are maybe the easier ones. If it says this, we don't do this. If it says that, we do. The other 2 questions that came up, or the other 2 comments, it said in our notes, if the systems are firmly in place. Do we have systems firmly in place? Those that actually came, I'll give you the context, Catherine. I don't want to try and trip you up here. Superintendent recommended October 5th as a target date to bring back K and 1 critical development and to facilitate transition of 6th graders, as Barb had mentioned earlier. If the infection numbers continue to stay low, and we talked about that in the matrix, if the systems are firmly in place, and if the teachers are successfully matched with students, she would bring those 3 levels in for 1 week and bring all the other students in the following week. In other words, move forward right into hybrid. What are the systems that need to be firmly in place, and are they? And then if the teachers are successfully matched, I think that may be still one that we're not quite sure about yet. But just tell me your thoughts about those, if you would.
So the systems are all the pieces that support our kids. So is all the technology in place so that we can support 25% of the youngsters that are remote? And the answer to that is yes, clearly yes. We feel we have good, solid systems. Your question earlier tonight about whether teachers, how were they doing? And we felt pretty strongly, you heard from Pam, that they've really done very well with it. It's not perfect yet. They're still learning. We're all learning. So I believe that. We have nursing facilities in all the buildings. We have protocols in place. When I talked about systems, all of those protocols are in place. Those protocols that you voted on, that you said were important to have in the building, they are there, including the cleaning. We didn't talk to Matt about that tonight, but certainly that the systems of how we're going to clean the building, when it's going to get cleaned, by who, and what, all of the pieces to that. We also had to look at food and how we were going to distribute food. How were we going to feed the kids during the day? And we talked about that in instruction, that we would satellite a couple of schools, and we would cook out of the other schools. So, and then transfer the food to those buildings. The other piece that we talked about, obviously, was transportation. Could we get these kids to and from school, know how to get them, get the bus routes straight? Did we have enough bus drivers to do that? And the answer to that was yes. So the last piece was the teachers, no question about it. We're trying to match up to make sure that the teachers that can come in and will come in are available, and those that we can have to stay home. One of the neighboring school districts, one of their problems was teachers to do remote in Laconia. They didn't have enough teachers to do remote, so they hired a couple of retired teachers to help them with remote. So that's what we meant by matching them up. And so that process will be finished tomorrow. But I'm 90% confident that we will have enough staff to cover what we need in the classrooms and remote. Based on that number. We don't have a lot of people that are not coming to work at all, that are on leaves or anything like that. So that helps. People haven't said, I'm going to resign because I don't want to be in this situation. We haven't seen that.
Thank you.
I don't know if I answered that.
Stay right there. You answered it beautifully. So if you all think back to August, it was really, I was one of the most forceful people on our board to say we're not ready to do this hybrid thing. No way, no way, no way. We need to have a solid remote. And what happened in the 3 weeks of August is the remote plans came together really well. Yeah, we've had our glitches, but when you have I always put my coaching hat on, and if we have a hybrid plan that can work, we have to have a deadline to get it ready, because what happens is everybody brings their A game. My reluctance about pushing this off, or we need more information, we don't have the information. It changes every 10 minutes. Sorry, Gina. So I talk fast. So I guess my point is, I have as many questions as you do, Chuck. I have as many concerns as you do, Tom. There are so many unanswered questions that, quite frankly, there are no answers for. My feeling, having spent hours talking to you and looking and reading and researching other districts and looking at the numbers and noticing that the little kid numbers are really low and the college numbers are exploding, and all of the ways that this affects us, I feel that setting a deadline, we need to have it ready for now, knowing full well a million things could change it, is better than putting it off until we get more information. Because we don't even know what the information is. It will present itself. I also feel that our September 23rd instructional committee meeting will be to make darn sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted before we send kids into buildings. So I guess I'm trying to acknowledge the concerns, but sort of say, look, if you want to win the race, you have to pick the race and train for it. And I feel that if we want to put together a good, safe hybrid program, we have to pick a date and make it work. And that's just sort of how I feel generally in the big picture, trying to facilitate this.
Mr. Parker.
Yes, I was on this instructional committee as well, and I think we discussed this at length, and some of it is also having confidence in the district to perform under these different circumstances. And if you look at, from what I'm hearing and from constituents, is both things. Some are not happy, some are, but we had to make a decision about moving forward. It was, now we're about a month away, but back then we were 6 weeks away. And I know, because I'm in the industry, that things do change rapidly, and we can't predict the future. But again, we had to make some decisions, and I thought it was thoughtful. We can change. We can always pull back if that is necessary, and it may be. We don't know what's going to happen in November. Really don't. If we have another surge, then we go remote. But we felt the responsibility, given the numbers and the matrix from which we were working from, to make this recommendation. So, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Other comments or discussion? Ms. Cannon.
Yeah, I was also on the instructional committee, and I after looking at the various new data that's coming from the state, which is incredibly helpful, which we didn't have before. I understand to some extent, I think, Mr. Kresch's concern, and part of my concern is if we have to pivot again, how much chaos that's going to create again. It doesn't change my vote and doesn't change where I think we need to be aiming for, but I want to acknowledge that there's a concern about having to pivot again. And the routines that kids are going to be dysregulated because their routines are going to be messed up again, and parents are going to get messed up again for work, and if we have to end up closing again. I hear that, I want to acknowledge it, but I don't think there's anything I can do about that.
Other comments? We currently have a motion and an amendment. I think we need to vote on the amendment first. Let me read the motion. The motion is to approve a transition to the hybrid model October 5th for grades K and 1, 6, and 9, and for October 12th for the following week for the remainder of the grades, as outlined in the August presentation for hybrid learning. Is that correct?
That was the initial one?
Right.
Do we need to vote on amending
Well,
it?
we need
or do
to
I just...
vote first on the amendment. whether we want to add the amendment to it.
Because I put contingent upon parameters in the matrix
And
indicated
that is
safe.
the amendment.
Yeah.
The amendment would be, which we will vote on first.
Okay,
The
got it.
amendment is, provided data is in compliance with the matrix presented by the superintendent tonight for a hybrid learning model.
Perfect.
Is that accurate to what
Yes.
your amendment was? Okay, so first we need to vote on adding that amendment to the motion. Do I have a motion to
Since I
add that
made
amendment?
the motion, I move that we accept the amendment.
Okay, do I have a second for accepting the amendment?
Who seconded the original amendment?
David.
David?
So Dave, do you agree with the amendment?
Well, it doesn't really matter. This is an amendment to that motion, and we all can present it. Anyone can present it and second it, and then we vote.
I seconded the first,
Yeah.
Right.
not the,
I'm just saying that,
I think that, we can do this, but I think it's what we were going to do with the hybrid model anyway. I mean, it's what we were planning
But
on
it
doing
was just
anyway.
going to be laid out more
I wanted to
specifically.
back up a sec for the procedure, because how
Right.
we've done amendments before is different than how we're doing amendments tonight.
Sorry, I was doing amendments per the Roberts Rules of Orders, in which case the amendment is
Okay,
voted on first.
go for it.
Yeah,
And we would do it.
but I didn't
But
No,
second
no,
the
no.
amendment, I didn't get a chance.
I am open, I just want to make sure. So, do I have a second on the amendment to the original motion?
I'll second it.
All right,
Okay,
great.
seconded by Gina. Is there anyone else want to add anything to that? Then let's have a vote.
Okay, so this is just to add the amendment of...
We add the amendment to the original motion.
Yeah, so Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond-Skora?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
All right, so we have amended the motion so that the motion that we are currently considering is to approve a transition to the hybrid model October 5th for grades K and 1, 6, and 9, and for the week of October 12th for all the remaining grades, as outlined in the August presentation for hybrid, provided data is in compliance with the matrix presented by the superintendent tonight for a hybrid learning model.
Yes. So now, was that moved and seconded still by myself and David, or do we remove it and re-second it?
That part I'm not really confident. I don't know. but
I'll go ahead and move that what you just read is the...
I think it has been moved and seconded.
Yeah,
and
because we amended it, so it's all set.
So
Okay,
if
good.
there's any
So-
further discussion,
Right, and then we just vote.
then let's vote on that.
Okay. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
So, yeah, so I really struggle with this. I think I know how I'm going to vote. I have concerns that we don't have the number of teachers. We think we have enough. I have a concern about that. I like what Gina said about how much chaos that we're going to create when we pivot, and I'm not sure we have a plan or system about that, which is concerning. But on the flip side of the coin, I hear what Barb said about the goal and the race. That made a lot of sense to me. So I'm going to vote aye, but I have a lot of concerns, and I'm slightly disappointed that I don't have more information in being asked to make this vote by the administration. So, aye.
I'll work on that stuff for you, Chuck. Thank you.
Thank you.
I say aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Redmond-Skora?
I think I'm going to abstain. It doesn't look like my vote will make a difference, and since I haven't been part of anything up until now, I really don't feel well enough informed to make a decision.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Mr. Richards?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
I could cry. Okay.
So the recommendation and the motion pass.
Passes. 8 ayes and 1 abstention.
Jim,
Thank you.
can I say something about this?
Yes,
So-
Mr. Croto.
This is perhaps putting the cart in front of the horse, but the reason I sort of moved my vote to what it was tonight is because we're all in this, I hear this so often, I hate we're working very hard together as a team to try to make this happen, and I know very well that if something goes wrong, we're going to pull the reins in and we're going to stop and think and figure it out. And because I feel so confident that that's what we'll do, I feel confident that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments? I will just
And I
second.
want to be clear, I'm sorry, I want to be clear, I know the administration was working hard. Look, none of us have been through a pandemic, and I'm understanding of that, and I do believe that we'll figure it out. I like what Tom said a lot. But my perspective is, I like to have all the data and the facts before I make a vote. So that's my frame of reference, but, you know, I know everybody's working hard, and it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Parker.
No, I'm done. That's okay.
Any other comments?
I forgot what it was.
Buckle up, Kathleen.
Thank you, Superintendent. I am confident that you will enforce the regulations on masks that we had previous and distancing, and make sure that the administrators in each of the buildings are having their teachers administer. I have that tremendous confidence, and that if that doesn't happen, that you will, you know, rethink the hybrid situation and our ability to implement it. Mr. Parker.
Yeah, in your weekly messaging, maybe you could give us the more detailed facts, and I think that would help us to appreciate, like, how many people are coming back, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments before I move on to the next item? Thank you. The next item is other business, specifically a permanent superintendent search. Mr. Croto, do you have any updates for us at this time?
Well, I know that Mr. Dunn and I have begun discussion about the superintendent search committee, and I know that we are planning to have another meeting, perhaps a non-meeting, in the future, but that's all I'll say at this point. We haven't stopped thinking about it for a moment.
Okay. Thank you.
No, we haven't.
So I'm sure it's in the back of all of our minds, despite the COVID situation we're facing. If you would like to schedule a meeting, we will next be moving into the proposed calendar of meetings, so it'll be appropriate at that time. Does anyone else have other business they would like to? Okay, then we will go into the proposed calendar of meetings. And part of this will be a discussion of the future meetings and how they'll be conducted in person and remotely with regards to both the board and the public. Am I right, Mr. Crush?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ritchie.
Thank you. So, Superintendent, are you going to review the proposed calendar of meetings? Thank you.
Sorry, just trying to straighten out our dates also. So if you look at September, which you've already begun to, can you hear me? No?
Now you can.
The month of September is a busy one for you again. We decided, I think maybe, Barb, you might want to speak to it, but we needed a little bit more time on instructional committee before we jumped into it tomorrow. So that's why,
thank you.
After discussion with the chair, we decided to postpone that meeting and go to the 23rd. We would have plenty of time. I'd have a chance to really delve into some of the questions that you had tonight around pivoting and communication and things that Chuck brought up to our attention. So we're going to go with the 23rd. But next week, you have your capital facilities. I think you heard from Matt. You really want to engage in that one. The 16th is communication and policy. We have a number of policies we're going to bring forward. Karen and I have been working on those policies for your meeting. I think we should talk about the matrix, and I think we should talk about whether we want to make that part of our policy or part of regulation. We can talk about that. And then the following week, you have your executive committee, and then we'll have our instructional committee meeting. So you're busy every Monday and Wednesday of the month of September. Are you good with that? And then into October, your schedule is pretty much the same. We do have a holiday in there on the Monday, but you have your Monday and Wednesdays are booked with your committee meetings. Now, the question will be how you want to run those meetings. Do you want to run them remotely? Do you want them virtually, or do you want them in person? So, in person, we could use obviously the room at central office, downstairs the boardroom. That's large enough where we can space out. Sure.
Jacket.
It's just cold
You
here.
just need a jacket. Yes, it is very cold down there.
It's cold here.
It's cold here.
Yeah, I don't have a jacket on.
Is that help?
That, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
First,
I think there's...
Mr. Dunn, I don't see all the meetings I would expect to see in October.
Sorry. Yeah, if you remember, I mentioned in August, we were going to have the October, I think 7th, we said we'd have a finance committee.
Correct.
And then we were going to let things ride. I spoke to Tom over the weekend. I'd like to propose we move that finance committee up to September 30th.
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday the 30th. We have some new financial information that's going to impact this budget, which adversely affects the tax rate. And we're getting more and more information as we go. So we want to brief you on that, and we will probably be adding that special board meeting in October that I thought we would probably just ignore and let the tax rate do what it does, but we need to have more of a discussion. So we can set that meeting at that September 30th.
Thank you.
Committee
Mr. Croto, are you in favor of moving the Finance Committee meeting that's currently scheduled for October 7th to September 30th?
Yeah, I don't have any reason not to, and it's important that we meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing we were thinking, do you want to add a negotiations? Chuck, if you remember when we met on the 1st, we said we were talking about a Tuesday. How about the 15th?
We said it to...
How about the 15th? The 15th of September.
15th. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Could we wait to the 22nd? Or do we need to be before the 22nd? And I'm asking you honest answer.
If we can do the 15th, it'd be better.
All right, I will make the 15th work.
Okay.
Some negotiations.
Yeah. We were wondering.
Yes, September.
It's a Tuesday, so I know it's your off day, but I know we're trying to cram a lot. You could tell school is somewhat back in session when these meetings start ramping up. The other thing we thought maybe that night is to address your superintendent search. Would that be okay?
We can do that if it matches up with Ms. Smith's and Mr. Croto's schedules for that, since that would be their committee. I'll yield to their
That's fine with me.
Yeah, what's the date again?
Tuesday, September 15th.
Superintendent.
Yeah.
We have a very busy September. No doubt. And then, Ms. Poinier, do we need a meeting with regards to the city and community? Basically, I'm thinking of the stable. Any other things we need to do with that? And when would you like to schedule it?
We do. We were hoping for a morning meeting with the city team, and I believe Superintendent Murphy was working on that.
Okay, thank you. You don't have...
Yeah, okay,
There you
I'm
go.
good. We looked at 2 dates. We called down to the City Hall, and we were looking at the 23rd or the 30th of this month. We just haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay.
Obviously, they've been busy, but those are the 2 Friday mornings possibilities, so.
The 18th and the 25th, sorry.
18th and 27th.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't schedule that, I guess, now.
Yeah.
Does that cover everyone's meetings? Ms. Cannon?
I still want to bring up, particularly in light of all of the racial diversity things, did anyone look at whether we can call Columbus Day something else?
I think we can call it.
I just, without all of the, let's be sensitive to everybody's issues, that's a big one for a lot of people. And when we last met, we said, okay, we'd look into whether or not we were allowed to call it something different on our calendar.
Right. I do not have an answer to that
But
question. Superintendent, can we?
It's worth looking into, though. I mean,
Can
I
we
would think
put
we
it-
could call it anything. I think we could call, in our district, we could call it anything we want. If
And
it's a-
Liza has something she wants to say.
I think so. We could even just call it a no-school day for...
Liza has her thing.
Liza has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Ms. Pointier.
Yeah, thank you. I think it would be great to add that to the agenda for the City and Community Relations Committee meeting with the city, since while it's true that we can do what we want, I think it's a larger issue, and it would be terrific. I mean, I think it's already September. Probably we won't have an official name change for this year's long weekend, but it would be really cool to start working on it now for next year.
Yeah.
Ms. Cannon, do you agree that maybe the City and Community Relations Committee could take this and take the lead on this?
That's fine. I just think on our calendar, maybe it should just say no school. I don't want to inflame already inflamed passions on something that we
Could just obliterate.
Ms. Cannon, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that on our school calendars, that October 12th simply say no school.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second
Oh,
it.
hold on. Well, we'll discuss it in a moment. Do I have a second to that motion?
I said I'd second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hearing two different things. Seconded by Ms. Higgins. Let's have a discussion. Ms. Richards, what would you like to say?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Sorry, if you call
That's what most people call it.
Yes. Well, the motion, we believe the motion was to just say, and you can withdraw your motion and change it if you'd like.
I'm happy to withdraw my motion and remake it saying we call it Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Do we have a
I'll second that.
We
Yeah,
have a second
that's
for that. All right, discussion. Mr. Parker.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the right name for it, rather than no school day? I've heard as well that Indigenous is the way to go.
Our superintendent
Just a
used
comment, though, because you've been
Right.
so careful about these kinds of decisions as a board. You've been transparent, you've been open, you've had community input, you've talked to people, and I just would caution you, this is a very emotional, passionate topic, as Gina described. I just don't want you to go into a territory where you're creating controversy over
Trying
a
to stop
decision you
them.
made without giving everyone a chance to discuss it. And
Thank you. I was going to make that motion, or make that observation myself, is that I would like to put this, and I think it would be best on the City and Community Relations Committee, I would like to put this on the agenda so that the community can contribute and that we can hear some other voices prior to making this decision. So, you know, my personal preference would be to postpone this discussion, but not table it, but postpone it till after the city and community committee has a recommendation and we have a chance for the community to be heard. Now, Ms. Richards.
Can you give her a microphone?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you then discuss it at that committee meeting that you were talking about, can you vote in it on the October board meeting, the 5th, so it's able to be changed before?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I would think we could, and I would like to recommend that we postpone this discussion till October the 5th and make our decision there, giving the City and Community Relations Committee the chance to weigh in on this, as well as some public comment, and and any other input that anyone else has. Yes, Ms. Poinier.
Thank you. I'm not sure when the anti-racism group is meeting again, but I would also invite them to have a conversation about it and make a recommendation as far as a name. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree. Any other comments? Ms. Cannon, you
And
have a motion that we could vote.
Yep, I will withdraw my motion until such time as the city communication committee, that I always get the wrong name of the committee, has a chance to weigh in.
Absolutely. I think it's the intention of the board that I will formally refer this, Ms. Poinier, to that committee for us and to be put on the agenda for the October 5th meeting in compliance with the requests of Ms. Richards, Ms. Cannon, and Ms. Higgins. Is everybody okay with that, or do we need to have
No,
a...
that sounds good.
I think
That
that's
sounds good.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your input. Mr. Crush, have we addressed your issue yet?
No. So let
Please.
me ask a question, and maybe there's a non-issue. So going forward for subsequent committee meetings and full school board meetings, are we going to offer remote for people to call in, such as Teams, as well as in person?
Excellent question. For a point of discussion, anybody else want to weigh in or can?
I like tonight. I think it's gone really well. We have people that are home. We have people that are here. People came and watched. People called in. So I
like
think,
tonight too, Barb.
yeah, I think for the time being, I think this seems like a good model to follow. And again, we use the matrix to decide if we all need to stay home or, you know.
Ms. Poinier.
Tonight was great, and I thank the technical people for making it work, because it was going to be difficult for me to come in tonight. And I guess it depends, in my mind, on how difficult it is to set it up, because there are so many moving parts. So for sure, if we can keep full board meetings in this format, I think that would be terrific. We might want to try and slim things down a little bit for committee meetings, though.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, my main point, I'm sorry, Mr. Richards, my main point was the full board meeting. I mean, I get logistically this may be really challenging, but at least full board meetings should be like this, and it'd be great if we could have committee meetings, but I don't know the technical part of the job.
All right, so I will throw that out to the administration as to how difficult or how much of a logistic problem it would be, and perhaps we'll even get a little input or testimony from Mr. Hardy in the back. How hard was it to set this up? Can we do this on the board meetings monthly?
Well, now that we've done it, that helps, and it seems to have worked well, all with a little $20 adapter. But I think what Liza has mentioned, if we have to do the monthly board meeting until this, it depends on how much farther you want to go. But there's a minimum, instead of one person sitting in a room, there's a minimum of 3 people that have to run these every time, if not 4.
Oh, wow.
Superintendent, can we do this? Actually, though, yes, sir.
Please do.
Please come down and grab a microphone.
Weirdest, I've never participated in the meetings as the behind-the-scenes person as well. It does take, like Jack said, quite a few people. Clint Close helped with a lot of this setup. Jack's been here. I've been here pretty much most of the day. I think just offhand, I would concur with the fact for monthly meetings, like once a month, we could do this because it's worth it for what we're putting out there in the community. For committee meetings, we may just want to rethink I forget who said that, slim it down a little bit. That might be helpful. I would agree with that. The way we've been doing the virtual committee meetings seem to have been working pretty well. Or maybe the boardroom, if there's less people there, because we have all that equipment already there ready to go at the boardroom. And we want to be safe and healthy and socially distant as well.
So I have a question. If we had, like before, I had polled the instructional committee members a couple of weeks ago, and all of us were willing to do it at the district office. So if we had a committee that was all willing to come in, could we just have it there without Or do we have to? Because they're still on TV, and committee meetings don't have to have public comment. So is that something we could do as they went along, maybe?
I would be open to it. I defer in terms of school
Because
district policy.
we wouldn't need the remote piece as well, because I guess, I don't know.
Right, I think you could, I think that's a great idea. I mean, this is full-blown, have your meetings, all your committee information gets brought to this meeting anyway, so the
Right.
community gets to hear it.
Yes.
And make your committee meetings as efficient as you possibly can. I mean,
Right.
you looked at your schedule, and you haven't even looked at budget yet. That's coming, that's around the bend. So I would strongly urge you to have your meetings in the office,
Right.
downstairs. We can easily socially spread, and we've done meetings there remote before, and it's worked out okay, so.
Yeah, so I think rather than set some policy that we now have to stick to, if a committee can all meet in person, and then maybe that can come. Gina?
I actually want to give Chuck a voice. I know that Liza couldn't be here for other reasons, but I don't know, the people who are remote, are you remote for health concerns? And doing that in the boardroom won't solve your
Well, then we
problems.
wouldn't do it that way then we would do it remotely. Like we could, it wouldn't have to be all one or all the other, I guess was my point.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that the people who are home are taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And look, so a couple of things. One is the reason I chose remote is based on what I do professionally. I have a greater degree of exposure or possible exposure working in a senior living community in Massachusetts. So I try to be very careful about attending meetings in groups in all areas. So that's one factor. But I'm more than fine with just doing the monthly meeting like this. I think my main focus was to make sure that we continue to offer for those people who don't feel comfortable, the public as well as board members, at least minimally at the monthly meeting. And I get the technical aspect. And look, we can't have 4 people for most of the day for a committee meeting. I get that. But I think definitely we need to do the monthly meeting, and then we can work out the committee meetings as they come up.
Thank you.
Just one last thing that I would add in is we just need to make sure for both my sake, since Concord TV's taken on a role helping with the meetings, and for Linden, I would think as well, that we just know which committee has chosen what, and to try to go with consistency, but I get how each committee could find what works for them. I just want to know as soon as possible so I can figure out how we make all that happen.
And we're also happy to make it work for you guys because you're creating it all. So if you as a group decide a certain way is better, then that's what we'll do, because we want to be efficient.
So what I'm hearing is that for our monthly regular board meeting, this type of a setup worked quite well. And first of all, let me just say, thank you to all of the people who put this meeting together. This was a very easy to conduct, easy to listen to meeting, and hopefully the feedback from the communities they could hear and see as well. For the committee meeting, so I'm hearing that this is set up is for regular meetings. For committee meetings, they would be still remote and potentially in person in the boardroom, provided there was not public comment in that meeting. Is that how everybody is looking at it right now?
Chuck?
Yeah, just a quick question. Yes, I agree with that, but are we, for the in-person meetings, where we, like the full board meetings especially, are we screening and taking temperatures and things of that nature?
That's an excellent question. Should we put to a, we did not have an excessively large crowd here today, but should we be screening and taking temperatures as we come in? Chuck poses a great question. Discussion?
I mean, I think we should.
It's not difficult to do.
I personally agree with Mr. Crush that we should do that protocol just as we would if we have students coming into the high school or in meetings otherwise. I think we should set up a screening where you just the 5 basic questions and a quick temperature, no touch temperature for anyone who is coming in and attending this. With a limit of, you can create the limit, it's 100 or, though I've seen different ones, 120 or something like that, so. But I think that's something we could do and probably should do as a responsible thing for us as a board.
Yeah, and
Other
I think
thoughts?
board members should do it too, as well, yeah.
Absolutely. Any other comments on that, or? Okay. Mr. Crush, do you have anything else that you wanted to address with regards to meetings?
No, Mr. Richards, I think you addressed them all. I'm meted out now.
Well, hey, you're a big presence above me right now. So does anyone else have any other items they'd like to bring up? Ms. Cannon?
Do we need to go back and see whether anyone else has public comment at the end?
Oh,
of the
yes, we
meeting?
do. Thank you. We did not cover that. Public, the last item I would like to have is, do we have any other public comment? Anyone who would like to say anything with regards to the board?
Just one thing, Jim. I think Maureen had chimed in with her
Oh, I'm
hand.
sorry.
And she took it down, I think.
Ms. Redmond-Skura, do you have anything you'd like to comment on?
There was a question asked about people who are remote, and since I'm remote, I was asked if I would step into this position on Friday. And I was out of town until 3 o'clock this afternoon. But I was told I could do remote, and I am one of the primary caregivers for my brand new grandchild who is less than 2.5 months old, and the pediatric recommendation is very little exposure, and I have to wear a mask. So I would do, a socially remote, distance, in-person meeting, but I will be wearing a very heavy-duty mask, so hopefully I'll be able to be heard by people. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Ms. Poinier?
Congratulations, Maureen.
Congratulations.
And it seems to me that in the past, during non-COVID times, we've occasionally had a board member call
correct.
in. So we could always have a live meeting, and then if there were a board member who, for whatever reason, couldn't make it in person, they could attend on the phone. It seems to me that worked quite well, and I don't see, and the rules allow for it. So that seems like the most efficient way to get it done.
That is correct, and I would certainly, that is correct. We've done that in the past, and we certainly can do that for meetings going forward, or with Teams, which is our latest tool. That's superseded the phone a little bit. So I do not see a problem with that at all. So at this point, if no one has anything else, I would open it up for public comment on any topic. If anyone would like to make a comment either through the Teams app or on the phone. Jack, do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment?
So there's no phone numbers, and so far no one's hand is raised.
Let's wait a few seconds, because it takes a couple of seconds sometimes to update.
We have something on the chat, Jonathan.
On the chat, yeah.
Yep. Jonathan Lax, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to thank the board for its vote tonight to make plans to and hopefully return to hybrid learning starting October 5th. I hope that with the benefit of the new guidance from the state and with the cooperation of your staff, we're going to find that we remain in a low risk category with adequate staffing to cover both hybrid and remote learning, and that you won't foreclose the possibility of returning to full in-person learning if the numbers stay good and we have the staffing to do it. So thank you for your willingness to revisit what you did a month ago. I think you've now made the best decision possible in very difficult times. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lax. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, next one is Stacy has her hand raised. If you could unmute yourself, state your name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you, Stacy Duffy from Concord. I just wanted to say I'm very excited about the hybrid, and I just hope that on the days that the kids are home, that the schools look at doing really good remote learning classes and not homework like last year, but more continuation of what they did today. Because today, my kids had very good classes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duffy.
you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Dunn, do we have another comment?
So far, nothing.
No? I certainly appreciate everyone sticking with us from the community and the willingness to make comments. We very much appreciate your input. If there is no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. The motion to adjourn moved by Mr. Croto and seconded by
Mr. Crush.
Mr. Okay. Who was, I thought it was Mr. Parker, but.
So did I.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Seconded by Mr. Parker and heartily endorsed by Mr. Crush.
It's a co-motion and a co-second.
I believe this one does not have to be a roll call vote, and that we can just do a voice vote. So all those in favor of adjourning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Good job, Mr. Richards.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Nice job, Jimbo.